What's up, everyone? It's the Awesemo Deeper Dive. I'm Ryan, alongside Adam, to talk about Wednesday's 13-game slate. First things first, hit the like button, everyone. Sponsored by PrizePicks. Shout out to them. Thanks so much for the sponsor. Adam, how are you doing, and how excited are you for this 13-game slate?
Doing pretty well. I'm excited for this slate because yesterday was 2 games, which sucks. So nice to have a lot of games to talk about, I guess, and obviously excited to do a show with you for I think like the 4th time ever.
Yeah, it's been some time. I think we capped off the regular season last year, but more importantly, yeah, it's a 13-game slate. There's a lot of games, but we'll get to like some great plays and whatnot. But there's just doesn't feel like a lot of moving parts yet. It's going to come hit us with a fan, but we got a lot of early news early on. The Tyler Hero situation, Kyle Lowry being out for some personal reasons. We'll touch on all that, but first things first. Everyone use the promo code Awesemo for PrizePicks promo. That will give you a free $100 to sign up at that site. It's a fun new prop-based site, as those have been popping around the industry. Make sure to take advantage of that. I'll be touching on some props throughout the show, mainly in the early games, because that's what our free tool has. So everyone, make sure to check out our NBA PrizePicks free tool today. There's a lot of great stuff. Shout out to Eddie Lai for putting that together. It's been pretty. A lot of people have had some success as they have shared that with us, but. Let's just get to it. Do you have any opening thoughts on the first game to touch on? Let's go to, I believe I have the Philadelphia and Orlando game. Orlando taking on the Sixers today. Philly's 11.5-point dogs, 214-point total in this matchup. Orlando recently got back Jalen Suggs, and that just added another body to this team that was once shorthanded. Mo Bamba has slowly returned on and off there, but Cole Anthony was running the show for some time. Cole Anthony checks in at $7K on DK. He comes in at $7,500 on FanDuel, a nice $29 price tag on Yahoo. He's the first guy that looks to me that has the tournament winning upside for Orlando today. Talk to me about Cole Anthony and who are some other guys that you're willing to target? This team's coming in with virtually unknown across all the sites today.
Yeah, I think Anthony for sure is the most interesting to me. We are still waiting on the Wendell Carter Jr. news that impacts guys like Chuma Okeke and Mo Wagner the most. But Anthony at 7K certainly has tournament winning upside, like you said. My biggest concern is, well, for one, he's kind of just played terribly since coming back from, I think it was an ankle injury. I'm not too concerned about that, though. Like that kind of stuff tends to just work itself out. But we have seen some pretty unappealing rotations from Orlando since they got Suggs back. They have elected to, instead of just like cut somebody like Mo Wagner from the rotation, they've elected to just run a true 10-man rotation. And for Anthony, I think you still can get like 32 minutes if he's playing well, and he still has a very high ceiling at 7K, but it still kind of sucks because like it's really difficult to come up with a situation where Anthony plays 35 or 36 minutes, and there are a lot of standout guards on this slate. So I understand why he's not getting a lot of ownership, but he is someone that we know rebounds well, he can get a lot of assists, he can score, and so if there was one guy on Orlando that I think is likely to just break the slate, Cole Anthony would be that guy. Beyond him though, like I don't see much of anything. If Carter's back, it's tough to get there at 7,300 and it would knock Okeke back to the bench. If he's not back, Okeke's 4,400, which is fine, but I think still doesn't really stand out because of how deep of a rotation Orlando's running. Overall, I think this is a pretty unappealing team outside of taking some shots at Anthony.
Yeah, the only reason why I could potentially target Anthony, and that's not even like getting much above the field, is the upside he has. Otherwise, this team's pretty gross. I mean, if you're looking to make a PrizePicks play, you can definitely take the over on the prop line on Cole Anthony points. It's we checked that in. It was an expected win of 57%. But outside of that, if you don't want to play a Magic guy, I won't fault you for it. I just feel it's pretty gross. I think we can just move on over to the Philly side of things, unless you have any final thoughts on the Magic, barring the Wendell Carter situation.
Oh, I guess one other thing to keep an eye on is who starts at center. Since Mo Bamba returned, he's been limited off the bench. He's played like 16 minutes and 20 minutes. If we were to get an Orlando lineup with Bamba starting, it's somewhat interesting in tournaments because maybe he gets 28 minutes at 5,300. But even so, it will kind of, I think, just put him into the mix with a bunch of like 4,500 to 5K centers. Still a pretty tough matchup as well.
Yeah, I agreed there. That would make it would interest me slightly a bit more than it is now, but nothing all that great. Onto the Philadelphia side we go. I believe they come in last I checked with the 114 team total. Obviously, Joel Embiid has been playing pretty well of late. Obviously, it was disappointing on the MLK day. He was blown out by the Wizards, but Embiid checks in at 11K on DK, 10.5 on FanDuel, $50 Yahoo price tag. Embiid is someone on a 13-game slate, obviously a center position. It's very crucial on FanDuel to get that right, but Embiid is someone obviously can be the highest scoring player on the slate. That reason alone always gets me interested in taking my chances on him. Another guy whose price has fallen quite a bit, Tobias Harris, $6,700 on DraftKings, coming in with double-digit projected ownership right now. I like that $6,700 price tag for Tobias Harris. It's been some time. We've seen a good game out of him. Have you noticed something that changed in Tobias Harris besides the Philly media booing him and attacking him? But I think it's time for Tobias Harris to bounce back.
Yeah, I haven't really seen anything different other than he hasn't played great, but overall for the season, he's still a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. I don't really think the price tag here is deserved. I mean, even if you go back and look at recent games, obviously he was absolutely horrible against Washington, scored 10 fantasy points, but 38.5 in 42 minutes against Miami. That's a tougher matchup. 33 and 39 minutes in a tougher matchup against Boston. Got about a point per minute against Charlotte. He hasn't been great, but it's not like he's been terrible. And overall this year, 23.5% usage rate. In the games that Embiid has played, it's about 22.5. But he's likely to give you 35, 36 minutes. It's a very good matchup against Orlando. I think the price tag on DraftKings in particular, 6,700, has kind of gotten a little bit overboard here.
Yeah, and I think so. I know it's an early game, and yes, you might get in trouble by locking up his position. And as it's a 13-game slate, news is going to drop. It's going to move your projections. It's going to move your ownership on different players. I'm okay with going a little bit over on Tobias Harris. I know it might burn me by come at the end of the night, but I also think he can definitely help me win a tournament today. So I have no issues going to Tobias Harris. Even on Yahoo, he checks in at $28. I don't mind that, but talk to me about Embiid. Embiid's been playing really well at times throughout this over the last couple of weeks. I like his price tags across the board. His ownership is not that high. Yes, there's Nikola Jokic at the center's position that we'll touch on later on the show. But how do you like Embiid today? Taking on an Orlando team that's pretty goddamn awful. How do you like Embiid?
I think I'm going to have a lot of trouble getting him, which honestly scares the hell out of me because he could easily have 55 fantasy points by the end of the third quarter in this spot. It's such a good matchup against Orlando. The reason, though, that I think even at low ownership, I'm going to have trouble getting large amounts. And again, I haven't built lineups yet, but just kind of from looking through my stuff, I think I'm gonna have trouble getting there because for one, the center position, the opportunity cost is still really high. The 10,500 price tag on FanDuel looks good. 11,000 on DraftKings looks good. But like you said, you have Jokic at the top, but you also have a bunch of cheaper guys that have high ceilings, whether you're talking Aldridge or Sharp, depending on who's starting for the Nets. There's Bobby Portis at 7K. You have Nurkic. You have Gobert in a fantastic spot. There's a lot of mid-range centers that can conceivably give you very, very good scores. And then not only do you have Jokic as a pay-up option, you also have Giannis. You have Harden playing without Durant. You have a bunch of 9 to 10K guards that look really good. So it just ends up being, I think, kind of difficult to get him into lineups. I'm going to be happy wherever I get to him because I think the ceiling is massive. I just think from a roster construction standpoint, I still might have trouble getting there.
For sure. And for those who are looking for some free content today, our NBA DFS ownership rankings are free. Embiid currently checks in as the 32nd highest owned player on the DraftKings slate. So check that out. It's on the pinned tweet on the Awesemo NBA handle. I'll give you the list of guys in ownership rankings from 1 through the end of time. So pretty much 1 through 146. All the players ranked in order. You won't see the actual percentage, but for guys who are building 1 to 5 lineups, this is a pretty useful tool to check out. So make sure to check that out. Any final thoughts on Philly? One guy I do want to touch on, the guys who are playing on Yahoo, I don't mind Korkmaz at 11 if you want to spend out at a spot. But Anyone you want to touch on? Tyrese Maxey at $6,200 has been playing better of late as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention Maxey, 6,200 on FanDuel, also 6,200 on DraftKings. Doesn't stand out. Again, I think the point guard position is absolutely loaded today, but we have seen him just play a lot of minutes typically when the Sixers are shorthanded. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he leads this team in minutes tonight. And, it's obviously a good matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I'm fine getting a little bit above the field on him. We'll see what happens as the news breaks over the next hour and a half or so. The price picks play for you guys, I think, taking the under on Seth Curry assists. We have the prop lines at 4.5. We haven't projected just under 4. Expected win at 65. So I'll definitely take your chances with the Seth Curry under prop line with assists on our sponsored price picks. But on to Brooklyn and Washington. This game is going to be a ton of fun in terms of DFS wise to go to, in my opinion. I do like the game environment, and there's a lot of potential great options. Let's start on the Brooklyn side of things. James Harden and Kyrie Irving lead the way. 11-6 for Harden on DK, a very favorable 10-6 for him on FanDuel. Kyrie checks in at 9-3 and 8,900 on DraftKings and FanDuel respectively. He's the best play on Yahoo, in my opinion, comes in at $35. I really like going to Kyrie Irving there. How do you like this Brooklyn team? Obviously, no KD for some time. They've been rolling out a bunch of G Leaguers at the other wing position, the likes of Kessler Edwards. Sometimes we'll see David Duke Jr. I don't know what Bruce Brown did to Steve Nash. He deserves more minutes, but talk to me about this Brooklyn Nets team.
So starting with the two obvious spots with Harden and Irving, I absolutely love both of these guys. I actually think I'm a little higher on him than Alex is. I think I'm higher on him than the field is. I mean, we have on DraftKings, we have Harden projected for 10% ownership, Kyrie projected for 9.5. On FanDuel, we have Harden at about 21%, about 22% going to Kyrie. But we actually have 20 games since the start of last season where these two have played together with Kevin Durant out. In those games, Harden has a 29.3% usage rate. Kyrie's at 33.2%, 40.6% assist percentage for Harden, 30.2% for Kyrie. You're likely to get around 36 to 38 minutes from Kyrie, probably 38 to 40 from Harden. And this game has a really high total with Washington, last I saw, favored by 1 and a 235 total. So you don't really have anybody else on this team you have to worry about taking usage. Aldridge and Sharp to some extent. Sharp mostly just, getting putbacks. It's going to just be Harden and Kyrie shooting as much as they want, I think, and assisting a lot of the other buckets. So at 11-6 on DraftKings for Harden, 9,300 for Irving, I still just love both of these guys.
I do, and I have no issues rostering both. I know it's a 13-game slate. Both can put up 50 plus, or Harden could put up 60 plus, and Kyrie could put up 50 plus. Another intriguing piece of value is the guy in the front court, Marcus Aldridge, $4,600. I know they've been playing without Nick Claxton. It's a guy that I'm willing to sprinkle in. I don't know how much I'd be willing to get above the field on a guy like him. It's only a DK and FanDuel play for me, $4,600 and $4,400. How do you feel about Aldridge against this Washington front court?
I like him. I think this is one of the more interesting spots to kind of break down on the slate because in his first game back, last game, you got Sharp staying in the starting lineup. Sharp played about 23 and a half minutes. Aldridge played like 22 and a half, and then you got a little bit of garbage run. So the reason that I'm interested in Aldridge is I don't know who's going to start tonight. That hasn't been announced, or at least I haven't seen it. If it's Sharp, I still think there's a good chance Aldridge ends up playing either the same minutes or more. Like, I think you could get a 22-26 split, or at worst, probably 24-24. I would expect Aldridge to be the guy that closes unless Sharp is just playing absolutely out of his mind, which is possible. But either way, 4,600 for Aldridge on DraftKings, 4,400 with power forward eligibility on FanDuel. Even if he gets 24 minutes off the bench, he's going to look good. He's averaged about 1.14 fantasy points per minute off the bench this year. If he moves into the starting lineup, his rates take a hit, as you would expect. But to me, that would also be a sign that you're less likely to get a split and you're more likely to get like 28 to 30 minutes for Aldridge with probably the rest going to Sharp. That would make it where I think, the minutes offset whatever decrease in production there is. So one way or the other, I like Aldridge. I do think if he comes off the bench, the ownership probably is lower, which I guess makes him look a little bit better in tournaments. And conversely, though, if Sharp is starting, I don't mind going there either. I don't want them together, but Sharp's been a fantastic point per minute guy. He's very aggressive on the offensive glass. He's just put up really good rates when he's on the floor.
I agree with you. And I really don't have interest in any other Brooklyn Nets player. I don't really want to roster Kessler Edwards. I don't want to roster Patty Mills. I don't want to roster anyone really else. I like Aldridge either way, if he starts or not. I like him a lot on FanDuel because of the extra position eligibility at power forward. Kyrie Irving is an amazing play on Yahoo, $35 shooting guard only, but I think it's an outstanding play over there. And before we hop on over the Washington side of things, any other final thoughts? Do you have any interest in that?
Yeah, I was just the only other thing I was going to add was that with the Aldridge Sharp spot, if Sharp is starting, the only thing that could go wrong, because like I said, if Sharp's starting, I like both of these guys, just not in the same lineups. The only thing that could go wrong is you could get basically what we got a couple of games ago where Steve Nash out of the blue decided they were going to run a 3-man center rotation with Millsap being the third guy. It won't be Millsap today because he's out, but it could be Johnson or Griffin where for whatever reason, Nash just says, oh, well, we're going to play Sharp 16 and we're going to play Aldridge 20 and we're going to play the other guy 12. Never discount Steve Nash doing really, really annoying things for DFS, but on average, I think those guys are going to look pretty good.
Yeah, and that's a very good point there. Kind of overlooked the three-headed center situation. We'll touch on another one on the opposing side of things, but Kyrie Irving and James Harden are pretty. There's a couple good props over there in Prize Picks. Hitting the over on Kyrie Irving assists 4.5. We have that expected at a 70 win percentage. I think that is our highest expected win percentage on Prize Picks on our free Prize Picks tool. Taking the under on James Harden points is also 67 expected win percentage, 67% expected win percentage. But just want to touch on that. Shout out to the sponsor yet again. But let's go on to the Washington side of things. Here we get a team total of 118, a good environment like I touched on. Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, the new dynamic duo in Washington. How do you feel about that, being a Homer Wizards fan?
I am really surprised how much I'm enjoying Kuzma. So I'm 0 for 2 on Wizards trades recently because I was not happy when they got Westbrook, and then I was not happy when they got this group. And I enjoyed Westbrook in Washington. I'm enjoying Kuzma there now.
I've been impressed by Kuzma. He seemed to, I think, a lot of LA distractions, got rid of him, and he's earned every bit of the $7,800 DraftKings price tag, and he's in play. I think he's in play today. Him and Bradley Beal both coming in with very low ownership. It's the game environment. Brooklyn defense does not scare me whatsoever. I think Beal, Kuzma, and Dinwiddie, I expect the usage to be those three guys. I want to avoid the three-headed center rotation they have now in Washington. Outside of Beal, Kuzma, and Dinwiddie, what's your interest in those three guys before we jump on anyone else?
Not a ton. I think Kuzma's probably the first one that I get to because I do to some extent buy into the increased usage recently. Like even with Beal back recently, he still has like a 25% usage rate with him on the floor. If you look over the last month or so with like Harrell on the floor, his rebounding percentage is still 16.5%. Same goes for Gafford. So I think while the rates probably take a step back from when Beal was out and Kuzma was the backup center, I still think that you're seeing a more assertive Kuzma and getting more rebounds. The biggest concern I have here is Washington is fully healthy for the first time this year. Last game was the first time we got to see Washington's rotation with everybody active that would normally be in it, and that's why Denny Avdia didn't play. But Kuzma was only really on pace for like 32 minutes. At this price tag, when you factor in that the rates probably are going to regress at least a little bit, I still really need Kuzma to be playing 36 minutes. I have trouble getting there at 32. So in tournaments, like I mentioned him in my DraftKings tournament video as I think the 5th tournament play according to the Boom Bust tool. He's still interesting at that low ownership in this price tag because if for one reason or another he does get to 35, 36 minutes, he can still put up a monster game. I just don't feel comfortable at all with everybody being active for Washington when you're talking about basically trying to fit 4 guys into 1.5 positions with Harrell, Gafford, Bryant, and Rui.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is there I have no real interest in anyone else on this team. Those 3 guys seem the way to go just because there's so much more. I just feel confident in other value plays. Do you see another value play on this team that could potentially take down a tournament?
Not really. I mean, this is just one of those teams where like everybody's getting back healthy. Gafford's playing like 12 minutes now in the last couple of games. He's played like 8 and 10. Bryant's not playing quite enough at 3,700. I mean, if this were a shorter slate, like if this were last night, I would take some shots at Thomas Bryant, but he's center only on DraftKings. I still can't really expect him to get more than like 16 minutes. I don't see a whole lot of anything on Washington.
Yeah, no, it's a good Vegas total. I think it's 234, but I like taking my chances on Beal and Kuzma and sprinkling in some Dinwiddie, but no one really else. If you guys are looking for a Prize Picks play, I think the over on Kuzma, 2.5 assists, comes in with expected win of 66%. But On to the next game we go. Portland and Miami. Portland, I believe Miami's an 8.5 point favorite, 211 total. But this is a very interesting game, especially on the Miami side of things. But we'll first touch on Portland. We saw the return of CJ McCollum, came back becoming a new dad, and then also coming back from a collapsed lung. CJ McCollum without Dame Lillard has always been a cheat code in the years past. And I just think I'd be willing to go above the ownership by quite a bit today. I like targeting CJ McCollum. Talk to me about CJ McCollum, and are you a little concerned with the minutes? And obviously coming back from collapsed lung doesn't really help him. But how do you feel about CJ McCollum?
I think I'm a little bit more bullish on the potential playing time here. I think it sounds like you and I are on the same page there. The issue that I run into is that it's still a pretty difficult matchup against Miami. This is one of the lowest implied totals on the slate. And there's a lot of guards that I really like that I don't have any concerns about. So, like, I expect McCollum to be productive, or at least his rates to be there. Who knows, how long it's going to take him to shake off the rust. But I expect the opportunities to be there for him. And I think there's a chance that you get like 32, 33 minutes tonight. But I still don't know that makes me really want to get to him. But I think I do agree with your overall point that, like, he is one guy you can look at, and I'm looking at him saying, I don't think I'm going to get there, but it wouldn't shock me if like 5 hours from now, I'm just like, damn, I should have just been a little bit more confident in McCollum.
Yeah, I think in tournaments, I think I'd be willing to take my chances on going over on CJ McCollum. And if it burns me, so be it. I'll be chasing that for some time. I just think without Dame Lillard in the picture, and it's a pretty depleted team, I think I like taking my chances. And he's my favorite Blazer. Honestly, no one else really sticks out to me. If you're looking to roster a Blazer, you can definitely take your chances on Nurkic, but it's only one center. The opportunity cost is high. It's a tough Miami matchup. But honestly, I don't see Anthony Simons. I just expect Simons just to come down to earth with McCollum being back in the picture. Do you want to take your chances on anyone else? Is it Nasir Little at a 5,500 price tag appeal to you by any chance?
I mean, Little's okay. Like, he probably plays 34 to 36 minutes. You could make the same case for Covington. He's gotten pretty expensive. The only guy here, outside of, if I do end up with a little bit of McCollum, which I'm fine with, the only guy here that I think I probably get to is Nurkic at 8,700 on DraftKings. You can roster the two centers there. The matchup's not great, but I still love the playing time that Nurkic is getting. And you still have a shorthanded front court with no Zeller and no Nance. You could just very easily see another like 36 minutes for Nurkic, and he's averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute overall this year. So not even just talking, when Lillard's been out or anything, just in general, around a 1.25 fantasy point per minute guy that could play 36 minutes.
Yeah, and I feel a little bit bullish on McCollum. So on Prize Picks, his prop total comes in at 17.5. Our team projection has him on the tool at 19.29. Expected win rate 60%. So if you want to take a chance on a Portland Prize Pick prop, definitely take your chances with McCollum would be my suggestion. But onto the Miami side of things we go. Miami checks in with a team total of 112. We got news earlier in the day. Tyler Hero is in health and safety protocols. Kyle Lowry's out for personal reasons. Bam Adebayo returned to the team earlier in the week. This leads up for the Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler show. Butler comes in at 9,100 on both sides, DK and FanDuel. I think Butler's a pretty elite play today against a pretty bad Portland defense of late. But how much of a priority is Jimmy Butler for you today?
I wouldn't say priority. I would say I think he's a good play. 9,100 for him, where he should be getting lots of assists. Limited sample this year, but without Lowry or Hero on the floor, he's got like a 42% assist percentage. And we know, for the season, he's around 28 to 29%. So I do think he looks good. Small forward eligibility is nice too. That's always a difficult position to fill. It's a good matchup against Portland. So yeah, I mean, I do like getting to Jimmy Butler here.
Yeah, I have no issues there. I think we got a shout out to Adam Palmer. He sent us a super chat. We'll touch on it, but we'll touch on the Boston team. But Robert Williams getting overlooked versus the worst defense against centers, defense versus centers tonight. How do you feel about Robert Williams kind of preluding one of the later games?
I mean, I like the matchup for sure. I like that he's been playing a lot of minutes recently. Horford's been cut back. The issue that you're going to run into is that it's just the opportunity cost of the position. But in tournaments, as long as the ownership's low, I have no issue with that.
Yeah, that's how I feel pretty much dot on. We'll touch on that game next, but I want to wrap up this Miami situation. I know there's Jimmy Butler and Bam. If you were building one lineup, I know you're not a one lineup guy, neither am I, but would you want to get one of Butler or Bam in?
I wouldn't force it, but I think there's a decent chance Butler would make his way in there. I mean, he's likely to play 36 minutes. He's going to get plenty of shots up. It's a good matchup. The assist should be there. So I certainly wouldn't be surprised if I got the Butler. And then and Bam's fine too. But again, kind of the same conversation at center. Like there's 100 guys that kind of look the same. But if you don't get to one of those guys, I mean, even getting to like one of the value pieces, whether it's Vincent, Strus, Duncan Robinson at 3,800, I think any of those guys are fine as well. So Butler is the one I would like to get to first. But if I am going, like let's say Harden, Kyrie, it's going to probably be difficult to get Butler in that same lineup. But somebody like Duncan Robinson or Gabe Vincent could help out.
Yeah, and they're missing two of their rotational guys, and what Spoelstra exactly will do with those minutes is I'm a little uncertain just because we missed out on Bam Adebayo for so long. I don't mind taking my chances on $3,800 Duncan Robinson, especially on DK, where you get that 3-point bonus. There is the upside of him just knocking down 6 to 7 3-pointers and really carrying that price tag. Do you have any final thoughts on Portland before we move on to the next game? Portland, Miami.
Yeah, from the Miami side, so and I'm with you on Robinson too. The thing that's interesting to me is we kind of got this rotation last game, except for Hero was in and played 34 and a half minutes. But what's interesting to me is like last game, Max Strus played 29 minutes. So I don't think you can really you could, but you're probably not going to really get more minutes there. Vincent played 27 minutes. I think it's likely he plays a little bit more with Hero out. But Duncan Robinson only played 17.6 minutes. He basically split 48 with Strus. That's why I'm pretty bullish on him here, is that he's like the one guy. Caleb Martin played like 21 minutes. But of the main rotation guys, when you're trying to figure out where Tyler Hero's minutes go, Duncan Robinson's like the one rotation guy that very clearly played fewer minutes last game than I would expect him to play over a larger sample. And they need offense. Like Duncan Robinson's shooting is really useful when you don't have Tyler Hero out there. So not that normally I don't really like Duncan Robinson a lot. I'm also not sure that I've ever gotten him right in my DFS career, but I do like him quite a bit tonight.
Yeah, and this is going to be ridiculous, but I need to bring up a 3K Kyle guy just because their lack of backcourt guys. Do you get a few shares of Kyle Guy tonight? Is he that type of guy?
I gave him 4 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow cuts into the rotation. I basically just used him as the filler because I went 30 on Strus, I went 30 on Robinson, I went 26 on Martin, and I went 32 on Vincent or somewhere in there. So it basically whatever was left over, I threw to Kyle Guy. But yeah, if I had to pick which guy from Miami is going to wreck my Miami value, it would be Kyle Guy.
Yeah, that's how I feel about that. And one of the last price pick plays of the day, I think, hitting the over on Bam Adebayo's points. The prop line over there is at 15.5. We have him projected slightly under 19, expected win at 68%. But on to the next game we go, Charlotte and Boston. I'm pretty excited for this game in terms of DFS wise. The field isn't at this moment, so I need to see what I'm missing out on. So I'm going to touch on this game with you. Boston's favored by 4.5. The over-under comes in at 219.5. Going on the Charlotte side of things, I've been pretty heavy on LaMelo Ball for about 2 weeks. And then he gets sick in Manhattan and decides not to play MLK game. But LaMelo Ball, 8,700, $8,200 on FanDuel, $38 on Yahoo. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. The field doesn't think so. Am I doing something wrong here?
I don't think so. Particularly on FanDuel, I mentioned him as one of my favorite tournament plays in the video I did earlier. 8,200 is a really favorable price tag for him. We know the downsides are that he can't stop fouling, especially for a point guard. The guy fouls so much. But you can still expect when he's not in foul trouble that you get 35, 36 minutes. Even if you just kind of project him for an average game, you're getting 33 minutes or so. He's averaged about 1.33 fantasy points per minute this year. The matchup isn't great. But at low ownership, I like it. On DraftKings, I think he looks fine too. The only real argument I have on DraftKings is he's only $200 less than Ja Morant. And we haven't talked about Morant yet, but he's only getting 15% ownership on DraftKings, and I absolutely love him. So that makes it a little more difficult for me to get to LaMelo. But from an upside standpoint, at low ownership, I think he's pretty much always a good play, and tonight's no exception.
Yeah, I agree. I think I might differ with you with the Ja Morant situation, but we'll touch on that. But I do like LaMelo Ball quite a bit. I don't really like anyone else on Charlotte. I think they're all priced appropriately. If there's a second Charlotte guy on a roster, Kelly Oubre is expected to return, so that's just going to cut into the rotation. They were running a tight rotation there for some time. So I would take my chances on a $6,400 Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward does tend to ball out weirdly. I think on Wednesday nights. If you just go back and see his Wednesday night games, they're pretty insane. But that doesn't matter. I just like tracking weird shit like that. But outside of that, it's LaMelo Ball for me. Do you have an interest? All these guys like Bridges, Rozier are priced up like someone's missing, or I think just after ceiling price tag for this rotation right now.
Yeah, like the Oubre news obviously matters. He cleared health and safety protocols. Haven't seen if he's in shape or not. But even when I went through and did my stuff, I did it with Oubre out just to kind of get a feel for how Charlotte looked. And even then, it basically looks like LaMelo looks good, and then it's just like secondary options with Bridges, Rozier, Hayward. If Oubre's in, you're taking minutes away from all of those guys, and it's just making them look even worse in a relatively difficult matchup against the Celtics.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point there. We'll see if there's. It's always really tough to say. It's a case by case basis with these players when they're coming back from this protocols, how many minutes they're really going to play. So I always kind of proceed with caution. I just want to take my chances with LaMelo. But onto the Boston side of things we go. They check in with a team total of 112. I'm pretty pumped about going to Tatum and Brown here. I like the matchup for them. I think Tatum and Brown should combine to shoot almost 40 to 45 shots a game. They're the usage pretty much should run through them. Robert Williams has been playing much better. He's kind of like jumped Al Horford in playing that extra 6 to 8 minute stint. It seems like the coaching staff did come out a couple of weeks ago. They just want to maximize people's strengths, and they notice Al Horford is kind of washed at this moment after a strong start to the season. With no Marcus Smart, we've seen a resurgence of Dennis Schroeder. His price has gone up to $5,700 on FanDuel and $6,400 in DK. Tatum and Brown are not a priority. It's just I'd be willing to take chances on guys like this where there's an upside of 50 fantasy points in this type of matchup for me. And Tatum, I just like being above the field on a guy like him on most nights.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I wouldn't say necessarily that like Tatum and Brown are mispriced because on average they cut into each other enough to where these salaries make sense. But in a one-game sample, you have a fantastic matchup against Charlotte. It's not surprising if one of these guys happens to get hot and just be the guy for this game. And they're not overpriced. 9,400 for Tatum. Like you said, you very easily can get 50 plus in this spot. And the same goes for Jaylen Brown. So I'm with you at low ownership. I like both of those guys. The front court, you mentioned, we obviously kind of already talked about Robert Williams, but yeah, early on in the season, you were sort of getting like Horford and Williams start next to each other and then they back each other up. They have their minutes staggered and Horford typically was closing. Now it's Williams that's typically closing. 34 minutes in the last game that Williams played. It's a really, really good spot. He's really volatile too, which is always nice in tournaments because it's not like he's a high usage guy, but he doesn't need to be because he can offer so much in the way of steals and blocks. And then, he rebounds well enough. So I think he's interesting in tournaments. And then Horford scares the hell out of me, but he's also 5,300. He played 30 minutes in the last game that Williams played. Didn't close, just played 30 minutes. Last game with Williams out, he only played 25 minutes. But at 5,300 in this spot with power forward eligibility as well, I don't have any issue getting to Horford.
Yeah, he comes in with some ownership. He's actually the highest projected owned guy on FanDuel right now, $5,100. He's burned me. He burned me quite a bit last week, so I'm going to proceed with caution there. But I understand why you want to land on him. The price is there, and we've seen the upside early on in the season for these guys. It's honestly shout out to Adam Palmer again. Thanks for that super chat. As Adam did an excellent job explaining the Robert Williams situation there. Any final thoughts on this game before we hop on over to the next one?
I think you touched. I'm not sure if you touched on him or not. Schroeder looks fine. 6,400 starting to get a little dicey. He only has like a 19% usage rate in the games he started with Tatum and Brown both active, but he's also averaged like 35 minutes per game, and it's a good matchup. So if you get to a little bit of Schroeder, that's fine. But I think I would say he's probably fifth out of the starters on who I get to.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't have that much interest in him. I think there's some other value guys I want to spend down on. He just kind of falls in a weird price range, kind of on its own island where I just don't have much interest going to Schroeder. Hit the like button, everyone. Doing my best trying to make some good time here. Onto the Minnesota-Atlanta game, the highest total between these two teams. Minnesota's on a back end of a back-to-back. They were god-awful yesterday, and they somehow pulled off the win against a pretty awful Knicks team as well. Let's touch on the Minnesota side of things. A Minnesota team where I've been consistently well over the field on Anthony Edwards, and it's worked out a decent amount of times, and yesterday it didn't. But Karl Anthony Towns, $9,500, $41 on Yahoo, $9,500 on FanDuel as well. I like Cat in this Clint Capella-less Hawks team today. I like Cat and Anthony Edwards a decent amount. Pat Beverly is going to have some ownership just because I think there will be some recency bias. And the price tag of $5,200 and DK, he's playing quite a bit of minutes, getting involved and definitely distributing the ball pretty well on this Minnesota team. It's been a surprise of how well he's been playing with this team. Talk to me about this Minnesota team, and do you have a preference among the big three in Minnesota?
I like this team in general because they're really not pulling much ownership. Beverly's the highest owned guy right now on DraftKings at about 10%. Towns is at 7%. Edwards is at 4%. Russell's at 2%. This is likely to be a high scoring game, and I really like the $9,500 DraftKings price tag on Towns. Like we kind of talked about, I said I thought it would be kind of difficult to get to Embiid, even though I really, really like him because he's at a price point where not only is he contending with Jokic, but he has a bunch of guys around him that also look really good. With Towns at 9,500, and this applies to FanDuel to some extent, except for Embiid is a little bit closer in price to Towns. You're getting out of that price tier, so it's more so you're comparing the Towns to guys like Ja Morant and Kyrie Irving and all of those guys. I think he's pretty comparable there. He's likely to play 35, 36 minutes, but certainly could play more. And he's been a very good fantasy producer this year. So I think he's a little bit underpriced. And then Russell, Edwards, I think are a little bit more difficult to prioritize at their respective salaries, but there's still a ton of upside. Like Edwards is likely to play 36 or 37 minutes. We know this guy is going to chuck up shots if they're falling. He's going to keep taking them. D'Angelo Russell is a good facilitator who's also a relatively high usage guy. So I think all three of them look good. And then I don't mind Beverly at 5,200. He's nowhere near as exciting as the other guys. Like you're not really ever expecting to have Pat Beverly to win a tournament, but as sort of a last piece in to round things out, I don't mind getting there either.
Yeah, I don't mind that whatsoever. We did get some news, I believe. DeAndre Bembry has been ruled out for the Brooklyn Nets team, so some extra minutes might be sprinkled onto the guys of Bruce Brown, David Duke Jr. Nothing too relevant. Just wanted to touch on that news that just came out.
It sort of makes me a little, just not that I was overly concerned about it anyway. I think Bembry being out makes it less likely you get that three-headed center rotation too.
Okay.
Just because there's like 18 to 20 extra minutes for James Johnson / Blake Griffin to soak up.
Fair enough. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Minnesota before we go on the Atlanta side of things?
Just a really appealing tournament team, I think.
Oh, I agree with you. I'd be willing to take my chances getting above the field on their big three. A little hesitant on Pat Bev, but I like the big three quite a bit, and especially the total goes for them. The matchup is pretty nice for them as well. On the Atlanta side of things, there's a lot more ownership on this team than there is the other. But Trae Young obviously leads the team at $9,800 over there on DK, $96 on FanDuel, $45 on Yahoo. He is not their highest owned player on the team, projected ownership. It's Onyeka Okongwu, comes in at the center spot, $4,600, comes in at, I believe, $4,900 on FanDuel. Played really well last time out. Obviously, they spent a lot of high draft capital on a guy like Okongwu. It takes up a center spot, and it's a matchup against Karl Anthony Towns. I am kind of confused on what to do with Onyeka Okongwu at this moment. He grades out to be a great value play. The minutes should be there, but how do you feel about Okongwu and the rest of this Hawks team?
I think he looks pretty good. I definitely want to pay attention to that ownership because, for example, he's at 26% on DraftKings. We talked about those Brooklyn guys where LaMarcus Aldridge is getting 5% right now, where Sharp, is getting none. I'm guessing we don't think he's going to start. But there are alternatives in this price range, and I do like Okongwu, but I think that, if you are getting by the time lock rolls around, if you're still getting, like a 5-to-1 ownership discount, I don't think the gap between him and LaMarcus Aldridge, just to name one guy, is that big. But I do I like him in general. He's about a 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. He started last game, played 36 minutes. He had come off the bench the game before that. In his previous start, he only played like 24 or 25 minutes, kind of just played poorly, got basically benched, and John Collins played center. But you do have a pretty big Minnesota front court here, and assuming Okongwu plays well, I just expect him to be out there long enough that he still looks like a solid option at 4,600.
Fair enough. I got a tough question for you. Well, let's say if you're building one lineup today on DK, does Okongwu find your way in it? For tournament build.
Yeah, I'll say in tournaments, I wouldn't hesitate. The way things look right now, I would play LaMarcus Aldridge.
Okay. No, I think I lean that way as well. It was a tough question. Sorry if I put you on the spot there, but I was just curious on how people are. I mean, the field likes him a decent amount, so I'm a little cautious by it. I think personally, I feel like I want to come in just with the fields, just like if I don't get burned too much by it. I need to see what the ownership will finally come in near lock time.
The way I see it right now, and Alex has it actually even closer than I do. I have a Kongwu over Aldridge by like 2 DraftKings points. Alex has actually Aldridge by like a point right now. If you're getting the sort of ownership gap that you are right now, it's not the way I view it. It's not that Okongwu is a bad play. Like if you have contrarian pieces in your lineup already, by all means, just go to Okongwu. But it's just going to grade out as one of the most favorable spots to get away from the field. I think is saying, oh, I can basically get the same projection at 1/5 the ownership and the same price.
For me, it's also I think that's one point for me. The point of also he's a center only guy, and I just think the opportunity cost is kind of high when there's a Jokic, right, Embiid, there's a Cat, there's a Gobert in a great spot. The list is pretty long. That's where I'm like, okay, I want to shy away a little bit, but I just think the value of him is pretty strong as well. So that's where I'm getting a little confused.
And that's a good point too, because you don't have to just compare him to centers. Like Aldridge, I think is the most comparable center in his price range, but we haven't talked about Memphis yet, but it's the first team that comes to mind. Like you have a bunch of value on Memphis. You have even on this team, you have guys like DeAndre Hunter, Gallinari, Kevin Huerter that are all similarly priced to Okongwu at different positions. You could just get out of that price range entirely and say, oh, I'm going to play Jokic and I'm going to play, I don't really care, Jokic and Towns, and use value from the wings on Atlanta. Like that's another approach you could take.
Yeah, fair enough. That's it's going to come down to this. We'll see what ends up happening. It's a decision point where I'm going to be juggling through the whole night. But how do you feel about the rest of this team? I know Trae Young obviously has 50, 60 point fantasy upside, so I'll be sprinkling some of him in as a field on DK, especially 16% projected ownership when I last had stuff pulled up. But Danilo Gallinari is getting some ownership as well, I believe. Comes in just north of 20%. DeAndre Hunter, his teammate, comes in just north of 20% at $4,200. He's been playing better. I mean, they want to play Hunter more minutes. It's kind of another reason why they let Cam Reddish go. And there is no Bogdanovic today. So how do you feel about DeAndre Hunter? I like the $14 price tag for him as well on Yahoo. He's just a guy who's very annoying to me in years past. Maybe he's improved, but he was so inconsistent early on in his career in terms of fantasy production.
For Hunter, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the price tag here. The salary kind of scares me, but at the same time, even if you just use his rates this year, where he's struggled a bit, he's around like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. Assuming he's going to get 35 or 36 minutes here, he's still going to look good at 4,200. Gallo at close to half the ownership. I'm interested in him too. One thing we saw from Atlanta in their last game that I think is really encouraging is that they essentially cut TLC out of the rotation. I don't know if that happens again tonight, but he played 4 minutes, didn't play it all in the second half. And what that basically meant was that you got 30 minutes from Gallo, you got 30, 35 and 36 respectively from Hunter and Huerter. I think that it's likely that you essentially get 96 minutes combined from Collins, Gallinari, and Okongwu here. So, Hunter, I think, is the safer one because I think barring foul trouble, the minutes are more secure. But Gallo at that ownership discount, we know he's capable of getting hot and scoring. And I think the volatility in his playing time is pretty appealing in tournaments since it keeps the ownership down.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. Another guy, if you want to sprinkle your chances on, it's a guy like John Collins, block upside power forward center. He's all openly said he's been frustrated with his role in Atlanta. We'll see if that does anything. It really does. Usually doesn't. But at that price tag, power forward center eligible, I don't mind it on FanDuel. He's going to be a low on guy. And on a slate, especially in this game, the highest over under total projected Vegas wise. But I think it's I don't mind sprinkling a guy like John Collins in either.
Yeah, and if they go with the same rotation, he's getting backup center minutes, which is always really nice for him.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this game? I do think it's a very appealing fantasy game, and I wouldn't fault anyone who's watching to get multiple pieces from both sides of this both sides of this game.
Yeah, I guess the last thing that I would point out, if you're approaching like a lineup and if you're not playing Okongwu and you're trying to figure out how to leverage like how to maximize your leverage there, I think Collins and Gallo are the answer. Because again, like I think if Okongwu plays poorly or gets in foul trouble, like if he gets in foul trouble, you probably see Gorgie Jang play some minutes, just to not have things get too crazy. But if Okongwu were to like play poorly and instead of play 36 minutes, play like 28 or something, I think there's a pretty good chance that Collins just picks up extra minutes. Like Collins didn't close in the last game. He still played 30 and a half minutes. They closed with Okongwu and Gallinari. If Okongwu is not in that closing lineup, that can very easily be Collins, and you get a situation where he plays several minutes more than everybody's projecting at the expense of Okongwu.
Yeah, and for those who were curious, we just also did get some news with Wendell Carter. He was just ruled out for the Magic. So keep an eye on all our data. It's going to be moving at a rapid rate with that breaking news. So, and also our free tool of the day, I mentioned earlier, our DraftKings ownership projections. Onyeka Okongwu at this moment, it's probably going to change, was graded out to be our 7th highest owned player on the DraftKings main slate. So just wanted to let you guys know, check out that free tool. You can find it on the pinned Awesemo NBA Twitter handle. On to the next game we go. Trying to make some good time with this slate, but touching on appealing game. Now we're going to a Memphis-Milwaukee game. You alluded to this earlier. You're about this Ja Morant $8,900 price tag, $9,100 on FanDuel, $39 on Yahoo. But the field absolutely loves DeAnthony Melton. He comes in at the currently the highest projected owned player on tonight's slate. Talk to me about DeAnthony Melton and Ja Morant, and what do we do with this DeAnthony Melton ownership tonight?
I'll ask you first. Do you think DeAnthony Melton starts?
Does DeAnthony Melton start tonight? See, it wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't shock me if I see John Conchar start the game. And
I think the starting lineup is Morant, Conchar, Williams, Jackson, Adams.
Yeah, and I have no issues going to John Conchar from the get-go. I don't mind going to him whatsoever at $3,600. You're going to get him at almost half the ownership, maybe actually less than half the ownership. DeAnthony Melton is an excellent, I think, fine FanDuel Yahoo play. He's a really good, picks up steals at a rapid rate. More like he picks up steals at one of the higher rates in the league. It feels like. I just think the ownership's a little too high on a 13-game slate. I think there are some pivots there. The uncertainty with these minutes is always really difficult. Now, it's an interesting question. Let's say DeAnthony Melton doesn't start. How much? It's always really hard to project what the field's going to do. How much do you think the field backs off of him?
If it's announced early, I think a lot. If it's announced late, probably not as much. But the thing is, too, if he doesn't start, I still think he's a good play because, I think
it checks a lot of boxes to make him a good play. Yeah,
right. The thing with Melton is that when he starts, you see a sizable drop in his usage and his assist percentage because of Ja Morant. When he comes off the bench, he's running the show, and especially with Tyus Jones out, that's going to be the case here. So I think he's a really good example of someone where it does kind of balance out, where like if he starts, I would expect him to play 30 minutes. If he comes off the bench, probably playing 24 to 26, I would guess. But the per minute production goes up. So I think he's a good play one way or the other. I was just kind of curious on what you thought about the starting lineup, because I'm with you. I think Conchar starts, and I think at 3,600, it makes him look like a very good value as well.
Yeah, I like Conchar quite a bit as is, with or without him not starting. I think there are a lot of ways at that price tag he can pay off, I think. Ja Morant, obviously, there's no Tyus Jones. There's no Desmond Bane tonight. So a lot of indication with him. I'm a little concerned. I do expect Jrue Holiday to return for this Milwaukee team today. And I really value Jrue Holiday's defense. And I do think he does want to body up Ja Morant. This is all really tough to project. And I do value that to a certain extent. So I'm not as excited to go to Ja Morant, even though this Memphis team is shorthanded as I once was. So that's how I feel about Morant. I know you were excited to go to him, and I wouldn't fault you. So I just value the opposing defender quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't really care at all. So that's the difference. Like Morant has a 33% usage rate without Brooks this year. He's got a 34.5% assist percentage. Memphis still has like a 112 team total. Yeah, I mean, I just still think Morant gets his, and I think the price tag's just way too cheap.
Yeah, I do think he should be without these guys and 10K player, and I do think he's cheap. I'm just on the other side of things. I'm just a little concerned. I know, let's say Morant gets bodied up. Do you expect the guys of like Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark? I have no idea why Zaire Williams is getting starting minutes, but the other guys outside of the chalkier plays, to spike an upside in a tough, not a tough Milwaukee matchup. The matchup should move, but against a Milwaukee team.
Yeah, I mean, if Morant is not taking shots because of Holiday, then I would assume that guys like Jackson are shooting more. Maybe, it trickles down to Williams and Conchar a little bit. I don't really know where else it could go. The only other wing piece that I want to mention, who I can't imagine is getting any ownership, he's not. If everything just like were to go sideways and either Conchar plays, 20% on Conchar plays a lot less than we're expecting, or 55% on Melton.
You're going to mention Jared Culver, aren't you?
It's Jared Culver. Yeah, like he's the only other guy here, I think, that can do any sort of like creating and scoring and anything offensively if someone like Melton or Conchar is playing poorly.
Oh, well, fun fact: if you're looking for a narrative, Culvers were invented in the state of Wisconsin. So, if you're looking for a narrative,
you know
what Culvers are?
No.
Culver's is a Midwest fast casual, like fast food place.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Now that you placed it, I can kind of picture it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's 3K, and if things do go sideways, and it certainly can. I mean, against a Milwaukee team that has all their guys pretty much ready, set, go, things can go sideways. Not to see. I mean, all this can happen in any game, and Culver could really pay off that price tag. So I don't mind if you're going to build a ton of lineups and he falls in some of your lineups as. You're going to spend all your salary and you're looking for a 3K guy. It's Culver. We haven't touched on many 3K guys. The other guy being Kyle Guy. This is the second.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Culver is my version of your Kyle Guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, things can pan out. It's a 13-game slate. A lot of things can go sideways for that to happen. So, any final thoughts on the Memphis side of things before we go on to Milwaukee?
No.
We got news. Robert Williams is out, by the way, before we want to move on, but just wanted to let you know, which is interesting.
So Al Horford looks better, I guess.
Al Horford does look better. He's going to also increase in quite a bit of ownership as well.
Yeah. Cantor at 3,100, I guess.
Yeah. Cantor's interesting option as well. I don't mind that because we've seen the upside in Cantor before.
Played 22 and a half minutes last game.
How many minutes did he play last game?
22 and a half.
Okay.
But
yeah, I'll take 22 and a half minutes of Cantor if we get that against Charlotte for sure.
So the funny thing, he played 4 minutes in the first half. So it's kind of like, I guess the range here is like anywhere from 8 to 23. Like Horford played 5 minutes and 38 seconds in the third quarter and never came back.
Yeah. And I don't know how much ownership a guy like Cantor will get. I do expect Horford to go up quite a bit to the point where he's one of the higher owned players on the slate.
Shaq Harrison signing a second 10-day contract with the Grizzlies.
Oh, I guess he's also.
Yeah, I guess he could play.
I guess is he in the player pool even?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, I guess he's available as well. Who is their backup point guard? Is it the likes of?
Oh, he is in the player pool. He's in the player pool, but he's on the Nets. So.
Okay, so he's not going to accrue any points. So backup guard handling duty. I know they signed Dakota Mathias. He's not a true point guard. It might be that 3K. I mean, we might say Conchar and Melton just like play all the backup points. So the minutes are going to be there for those guys under 4K.
I'd actually meant to mention that too. Is just another thing that scares me about Melton here. In their last game, he played 0 minutes alongside Morant. They actually basically gave Tyus Jones the Melton role, and then Melton was just the backup point guard.
Interesting. I would be kind of shocked if that happens this year. Yeah. And Melton has shown the ability to handle the ball earlier in his career, and Memphis kind of made him into like more of a wing type defender. But yeah, it's the ownership is definitely there, and I think he's a pretty outstanding play even with that ownership. But we'll see if any other value opens up rest of the night. But onto the Milwaukee side of things we go. We covered the Williams situation. Keep an eye on all the news that's coming in. Shout out to News God. But let's talk about Giannis. Priced up to 12K. He's priced like there's no Drew Holiday. Middleton's priced like there's no Drew Holiday. But Drew Holiday is returning today. I don't know what Drew Holiday's minutes look like. I haven't seen any of Budenholzer say anything. I know he's like progressing to come back. It was like a weird situation. Like no one knew when he was coming back. And then like earlier in the week, they expect him to come back Wednesday. Wednesday. These guys are expensive, but I like targeting Giannis because whenever a guy can put up 80 fantasy points on a 13-game slate, I'll be taking some chances on like him. The field is pretty low owned on DK. On FanDuel, it's a lot more easier at 11.3 on a guy like Giannis. And Bobby Portis stands out at $6,300 over there. These guys are priced pretty appropriately on Yahoo. No one really sticks out to me that much, but I like taking shots on Giannis and on DK and Bobby Portis on FanDuel, but that's really about it. Do you have anything else?
No, it's kind of crazy for someone as good as Drew Holiday is, how little he impacts guys when he comes back, because it's still basically just the three-man show or I guess four-man now with Portis, but Giannis's rates don't really change. The reason he was better with Holiday out was that you could project more minutes for him, but this game only has a 6-point spread. It's relatively likely you're getting 34 or 35 from Giannis anyway. Middleton is priced to where I'm not really interested. Holiday's priced to where I'm not really interested. And I still expect Portis to play around 32 minutes, which makes him a high upside option in tournaments.
And another guy I do want to touch on, it's a cheap guy. It's Dante DiVincenzo. This guy was the starter for pretty much the whole regular season, then gets hurt in the first round. There's going to be a DiVincenzo game at some point, and I've been chasing this for some time. He's a long shot tournament play. By no means do I have significant interest in him, but I'll be sprinkling him some DiVincenzo. I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, you're just like hoping it happens on like a 5-game slate where he's not massively owned, but you can actually reasonably play him as opposed to.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to nail too much of those this year, unfortunately. Like, I missed out on, I forget. There was one player I continuously chasing, and there's one slate I didn't play, and he just pops off. But, that's the nature of DFS for you. Any final thoughts on this game before we move on to the next one?
D'Anthony Melton is my guy in general for that, and actually won a night slate tournament with him in like a random game. I think that's the only time I've gotten there recently.
He's a night slate king for me personally. There are some days where he just pops off with 4 or 5 steals on FanDuel, and This is back when FanDuel didn't have multi-position eligibility, and it was it made with MP on FanDuel made the puzzle a little bit harder to solve, which was annoying. But outside of that, he really was very favorable to me on FanDuel over the years. But on to Cleveland and Chicago we go. Cleveland by far has been the most surprising team to me in the NBA. No questions asked. I am absolutely shocked on how well this team is playing defensively. And Kevin Love's a resurgence, and I think he potentially is leading 6th man of the year candidate. I don't know what the odds look like at 6th man of the year, but he should be definitely up there, if not the favored guy to win. This team has lost a lot of guys. They lost Sexton, they lost Rubio throughout the year. They signed Rondo. Okoro just recently returned. Darius Garland is finally balling out like a top 5 pick. He's priced up at $9K on DK, priced up at $8,700 on FanDuel, but the ownership is not looking whatsoever to a guy like him. Over there in FanDuel, Evan Mobley, $6,600. They just chose not to price this guy up. He's been a stud, by far odds-on Rookie of the Year favorite, I believe, at this moment. He's been playing exceptional basketball on both ends of the court. I like going to Mobley on FanDuel. Everyone DraftKings seems priced a little too expensive for me. Do you have any other thoughts on this Cleveland Cavs team?
I think DraftKings pricing is pretty efficient. One guy I did mention in the tournament plays videos was Kevin Love, just because of his per minute production. Like, he's averaging about 22 minutes per game with Mobley and Allen back, but he's still around a 1.25 fantasy point per minute guy. If you just get any amount of foul trouble ahead of him, he's got tournament winning upside. So obviously not somebody to go crazy on. He's a low probability play, but he's also projected for 5% ownership. We actually have him on DraftKings with the highest chance of being in the optimal lineup out of Cleveland guys.
Interesting. Yeah. I find I like being a little bit above the field, a guy like Jared Allen on both sides, honestly. So outside of that, no real interest on the Cavs team. At this moment, I think Al Horford just projects to be a much better play than Kevin Love on both sides.
Yeah, that's a good point. All of my Kevin Love takes were thinking Al Horford was playing alongside Williams.
No, I mean, there are ways to roster both, and obviously your roster construction can change up on that. But if you're looking for a 1v1 situation, that's how I think things did change there a little bit. But on the Bulls side of the game we go. They're out without Levine. Alex Caruso does return. Lonzo Ball remains out. We saw Ayo Dosunmu put up, I believe, like 9 stocks the other night. I was very disappointed by that. I was well under the field on him the other night, but yeah, he burned me. He's priced up now at $5,800. This Chicago team, I'm not very interested in going to. I know they're down a high usage guy like Levine. But with that being said, I just think this forces defenses, especially a good one like Cleveland, to hone in more on a guy like DeMar. And it doesn't make DeMar, I think, that great, in my opinion. Also, Caruso returning. How do you feel about this Bulls team? I don't have much interest on this Bulls team overall.
Yeah, I think they kind of just exist. Like, the ceiling is still certainly there for Vooch and DeRozan, but they don't really stand out to me compared to other options, in part because of the matchup. you get a usage bump for both of those guys without Levine out there. You get a little bit of an assist bump as well. But I think the prices pretty much account for that in this matchup as well. I think they're just priced about where they should be.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this game? I really don't have much else.
Should be a good basketball game, I think, but kind of sucks for DFS.
If you were to tell me Cleveland and Chicago is going to be a good
Yeah.
basketball game at the early of the season, I'd say, give me whatever you're smoking. But outside of that, hit the like button, everyone. We're only at 347 likes. We'd love to see at least 600 likes heading into live before lock, if not higher. I'd love it. But on to the next game we go. Oklahoma City taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Oklahoma City, just another bad basketball team, head to toe outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey. Only two guys I really have interest in on DraftKings. FanDuel, they're priced appropriately. I just like guys priced around them much better, even lower than them, that just project for better plays. I think this OKC team, very similar to Chicago, they kind of just exist. I don't really have any real interest in targeting one of these guys to be above the field. How about you?
No, that's how I see it. Like, if I get to some SGA or Giddey or Dort, I'm fine with that. They obviously have high ceilings, but at the same time, like, you take a step back and it's like, okay, SGA at 8,400, that's fine. Darius Garland at 9K is kind of the same thing, and we weren't really interested there. Ball is $300 more, not getting any ownership. It's just sort of, I think that Morant and Kyrie being 8,900 and 9,300 just sort of make it so any exposure to like the SGA, LaMelo, Garland type guys is sort of just for high upside contrarian plays.
For sure. Before we hop on over to the Spurs side of things, I just wanted to mention a new starting lineup in Orlando. Bamba starting, and Jalen Suggs is starting as well. Suggs, I don't mind taking some chances on at his respective price tag. Keep in mind that being the first game of the night, news, you might have to be obviously forced to lock in that position as news opens up. Any quick thoughts on that?
Who's Suggs starting for Okeke?
Chuma Okeke is going to the bench, and Robin Lopez obviously is going to the bench as
well. So I think that's a positive for Suggs. He's only 4,700. He's been someone that I play a lot this year just because he's cheap and he shoots a lot. So, I mean, I think it's a positive for his minutes. Like, you probably see.
Didn't he start this season like as just like the worst shooter?
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, he just kept shooting a lot. I kept playing him. I kept losing. I think he finally had a good game at one point. But yeah, I mean, it makes his playing time look a little bit better, I think. But I still don't think anything is a priority for me here. Bamba, again, like we had said before, he looks more interesting in tournaments, but still a lot of centers.
Yeah, and also going up against Embiid on the other side of things, and he's going to have his work cut out for him. I don't mind going to him at that price tag. Onto the Spurs side of the game we go. Today, checking out a team total of 114. DeJounte Murray has been absolutely balling this season. The ownership wants to go to him on DraftKings as well. Even on a 10K FanDuel, there's double-digit ownership there as well. I really like Derek White at $6,200 on DK. I think I'd be willing to take my chances of even getting above the field with that price and ownership that we have projected for. So I like White on DraftKings. No real third Spur really stands out to me. How about you? Everyone on Yahoo seems priced appropriately on these guys as well.
Yeah, I think White and Murray are the two that stand out. Murray's another just one of these massively high upside point guards that you can get to. 9,700, still fine. He's not quite as good with Derek White in, but he's still really, really good and a little bit underpriced for this matchup against OKC. White played about 29 minutes last game when Pop lied about him not starting. Then he started and played. I assume he's going to get like 30 to 32 minutes here. He's about a point per minute guy. They look like the best options to me. Pirtle and Keldon Johnson are both sort of, like whatever. Johnson's going to be the easier one to get into lineups just because of his position. But I think as far as priorities, it's Murray and Derek White.
I agree with you there. Any other final thoughts on this game? Keldon Johnson at that price tag on FanDuel is fine. I just think Horford's just going to jump him now with that news that came out with no Robert Williams.
Yep, agreed with that.
On to the next game we go. Toronto takes on Dallas. Dallas is favored by 4, a total of 207.5. This Toronto team has guys priced up. I mean, there's Siakam, there's Van Vliet, $9,100 and $8,600. Siakam's been playing well, priced up at $9,900 on FanDuel. I don't have much interest in those two studs. I like taking some chances against OG Anunoby and Scotty Barnes. Dallas has been playing well over the last 2 weeks, playing much better defensively across the board. There's not much interest in there on FanDuel where you can roster like 4 small forwards, it feels like, or 6 small forwards at times. Barnes and OG Anunoby are kind of in play. at their respective price tags. Is there anyone else you're actively targeting on this Toronto Raptors team?
This game's weird because it should be a low-scoring game, but Toronto just plays so many minutes, especially if Trent is out. But even if he's in, like I'm interested in a 1% owned Fred VanVleet because he's probably going to play 40 minutes and he's 8,600. But I'm with you. Barnes and Anunoby, like they're a little bit cheaper. Barnes in particular on FanDuel stands out. These are guys that if Trent is out, they're probably playing like 38 minutes, 38 to 40, talking about Barnes and Anunoby. If Trent's in, you're probably getting like 35 or 36. Either way, they're going to look pretty good. Again, especially Barnes on FanDuel. Siakam's probably the most difficult for me to get to on DraftKings just because of the center-only eligibility. And then where Trent, I think, really makes a difference is if he's out, you should once again get Precious Achiuwa starting and playing a bunch of minutes at 4,400. He's another guy where potentially, like, you might not even have the news for the Atlanta game, but if you kind of just roll the dice and go away from Okongwu, you can potentially swap on to a $4,400 Achiuwa at a lot lower ownership. Chris Boucher should play a lot as well if Gary Trent is out.
Yeah, I think that's Gary Trent, obviously very important news, not just for the Raptors team. I think overall slate kind of getting overlooked. I've also overlooked it and kind of reminded me there. I do think that will open up a lot of things for the Toronto Raptors side of things. On to Dallas we go. There's Luka Doncic coming in pretty low owned. Obviously, there's so many studs on this slate. You can't roster all the studs, and I like getting above the field on a guy like Luka Doncic. I know it's a Raptors team. They're not as good as they once were defensively, but I like going to Luka at 10-8 on both sides. He stands out pretty rock solid. The ownership's not really there. I know he's not been performing great. I think it's like he's kind of like Slovenian Harden, plays himself into shape as the year goes along, seems to party hard in the summer. That's how I feel about Luka. I like taking my chances on Luka tonight. How do you feel about Luka?
I think he's fine. He is similar to Embiid for me, where I think he looks good, but I'm gonna have a hard time, I think, paying $1,100 more for him than DeJounte Murray, paying almost $2,000 more than John Morant or VanVleet or Garland or whoever you like in that range. There's just so many guys down there that I think it's a tough spot for me to prioritize going there. And then also Harden's only $800 more. So
for sure,
it's difficult, but he's not getting ownership. So kind of like Embiid, anytime that you're getting to Luka or getting to Embiid at low ownership, it's a good play. It's just a matter of like whether or not I think it's the best play or not.
For sure. And these guys obviously have super ceiling potential. And I mentioned these guys. I do think it's very valuable when you can. There's enough value to get the two studs to score the highest. You're going to end up sitting really pretty. And there's value that's going to be touched on in the next game. I have no real interest on the rest of this team. Can Dorian Finney-Smith rack up those minutes and play well again? He's like DeAndre Hunter 2.0. Actually, DeAndre Hunter is DFS 2.0, but he's just like another wing guy who plays a ton of minutes. And can he spike that peripheral game? Sure. Jalen Brunson's priced a little bit too high now with Porzingis being back, in my opinion. Any other secondary or tertiary options on the Dallas side of things?
Pretty much Luka and Porzingis are bust for me. Assuming Kleber's still in the starting lineup at 4,200, that's fine, but there's still guys that I have ahead of him.
Fair enough. On to the next game we go. Houston takes on Utah. This is a massive game in terms of DFS ownership on the Utah side of things. This total checks in at 230. On the Houston side of things, no one is coming really that projected own. I don't mind taking some chances on some of these guys, like a Christian Wood, like a Kevin Porter Jr., especially on FanDuel. We saw Jayshawn Tate show that upside game of late. But outside of that, Jalen Green, potentially, he just sucks kind of as overall in terms of FanDuel and like fantasy aspect side of things. But do you have like anyone that you want to? It's not going to take much to get above the field on these type of guys. And can they avoid getting clapped by this Jazz team to be fantasy relevant tonight?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., Tate, any of the starters, really. If you get there, it's fine. Like, they're going to get no ownership. And it is kind of nice because they positively correlate with the team on the other side that everybody is playing tonight. So, like, if a bunch of Utah guys hit their ceilings, there's a pretty good chance that at least one of these Houston guys is doing well because the Utah guys are still in the game. So, like, I don't think you have to force a rule or anything on a 13-game slate. But I do think that, like you said, it's not very difficult to get over the field on somebody like Wood or Porter.
Yeah, and Şengün is another guy I just always try to sprinkle in my lineups just because if he somehow plays high 20s minutes, barring some sort of situation, he can pay off that pretty low price tag. It's a 13 game slate. Maybe it's a night. I think it's a pretty solid night slate decision to take your chances on him. Might be a little too cute on a 13 gamer. Any final thoughts on Houston before we jump on the massive ownership team?
No, got to get to Utah, I guess.
All right, Utah, here we go. No Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's in concussion protocol. Team total 123 against this Cake Houston matchup. A lot of guys stick out to me here. My favorite Jazz player to go to is Jordan Clarkson, $5,500, $5,600 on FanDuel. Very favorable $17 price tag on Yahoo. He is a priority value play for me. My second favorite guy on the Utah side of things is Gobert, followed by Bogdanovich, then Conley. That's how I look at those four guys. And I like them quite a bit. And then Joe Ingles is another guy I think the field wants to go to quite a bit. I expect Ingles to start. Do not get scared if Ingles starts and Clarkson remains to come off the bench. It's just something Quinn Snyder has done over and over again. So I expect Ingles to start, and I still like Clarkson quite a bit.
Yep, same here. I think you really can't go wrong with Utah here. Without Mitchell on the floor this year, Clarkson's at 1.06 DraftKings points per minute. Gobert's at 1.24. Conley's at 1. Ingles is at 0.75, but he's 3,700 on DraftKings, probably going to start and play around 30 minutes. Makes him a good point per dollar option. Rudy Gay is out, so you're probably getting more minutes from O'Neal. Bogdanovich has a 27% usage rate without Mitchell on the floor. He's likely to play a few more minutes as well. Any of these guys look good. Gobert, I think, looks the best to me, but he's also a center. But you get more playing time from him with Whiteside out as well. So Utah is so appealing tonight because they have multiple things going for them. One, you take out Donovan Mitchell's production, and that gets spread around to all of these guys. Two, you take out Hassan Whiteside as the backup for Gobert. Three, you take out Mitchell's minutes too, but you also take out Gay. And so you're just getting elevated per minute production from basically everyone, and you can tack a couple of minutes onto everyone as well. And it's a great matchup against Houston. It's really difficult to get away from entirely. And
another thing that Quinn Snyder does, even though if the Jazz are just wrecking the other team, they get that deep rotation run. They play like if it's a 30-point game, you'll still see them out there with 4 minutes to go. It's beautiful in terms of
especially at home.
Yeah. And shout out to Ryan Nelson. I want to call him Awesemo super fan. He's like everywhere. He asked me the favorite plays on Yahoo. Getting lots of Butler, Freedom, and Melton. I really think Clarkson's a pretty outstanding play at $17 on Yahoo. This is a priority team for me to target quite a bit. I like this team a lot. I listed off the guys I will be willing to target. I don't have any issues to get 2 or 3 of these guys. It's a great matchup. There's one of their studs is missing. That's all I feel. Any other final thoughts? I know you did an excellent job breaking that down.
No, that's it.
All right. Onto the Clippers and Denver side game we go. This total, I believe, checks in at 213. No one on the Clippers team is a priority for me. These guys are all coming in pretty low owned. It's Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson on FanDuel. If you want to get above the field on them, I wouldn't fault you. Amir Coffey has been playing out of his mind. I do not think this is sustainable of late. Marcus Morris got bodied by Aaron Gordon last time they played each other. They kind of shut him down. I've been waiting for a Reggie Jackson game for the last 2 weeks. There's going to be a game where he just pops off. And I missed out on it. And that's honestly, those two guys are it. I believe Kennard might return. I know Nick Batum entered health and safety protocols today. So there might be a change in minute rotation. I have no idea how many minutes Kennard is going to play. He missed a lot of time with the health and safety protocols. What are your quick 2 cents on this Clippers team?
Next, Reggie Jackson will shoot a lot. That's my thought.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I hate the matchup. I hate the plays.
That's how I feel about it as well. On to the Denver side we go. There's Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic said everyone in the league knows that we can't shoot the ball. They go out and get Bryn Forbes. So we'll see how much that helps him. He's not available to play tonight. But Jokic comes in, price up 12-4, 11-5. What do we do with Jokic? And can he take us to the top with that elevated price tag?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity cost obviously is an issue. He's not getting a ton of ownership, which is nice. Probably going a little bit under owned at 11% on DraftKings. I think last I looked, he was like 15 on FanDuel. But yeah, so it's as weird as it is. Like, I guess it's not a priority in the sense that I doubt that I'm just like jamming him in because I have so many other centers I like. But still, clearly more than happy to get to whatever Jokic I can.
Thanks, Ben P. Probably our new favorite duo. Love the content. Thanks so much for the super chat. And thanks so much for the super chat, Steve, as well. Really appreciate the kind words. But Another guy I do want to mention, it's a low own, maybe it's a much better night space, Ivica Zubac. There are times where Ivica Zubac, if he stays out of foul trouble, plays really well against Nikola Jokic. It would have been a lot better if Isaiah Hartenstein was not available, but Hartenstein's there. Just a night slate play I wanted to touch on. Any final thoughts on this game before we move on? I think Jokic is great. I don't mind sprinkling in some Barton or some Gordon in your lineups.
Have you seen if Forbes is available tonight?
He's not available.
Okay, then I'm interested in taking some shots on Highland. It's certainly not necessary, but he's played really appealing rotations recently. I know Rivers is back now, but at 3,800, even if you get like 24 minutes or something from Highland, that's not bad.
I think he's a great D'Anthony Melton pivot. I think price similar.
That's...
And obviously you can roster them both and you can do a lot of crazy things. But if you're building one lineup, I wouldn't fault you if you want to fade Melton. Melton has a bad day. You're jumping a lot of the field. But yeah, I think Highland, obviously, very talented player. He had some off the court issues, but he's very talented. I like him quite a bit. He just kind of got in Mike Malone's doghouse, which is really easy to get into. But let's move on to the next game. Detroit versus Sacramento. Detroit is awful. They'll be without Killian Hayes, and I still think the Kings might take care of business. Without Killian Hayes, I think Killian Hayes is doubtful with that hip injury. I don't know who's going to enter the starting lineup. It might be Corey Joseph. It might be Frank Jackson. It might be Saban Lee. But this does help, I think, Cade Cunningham potentially get more ball handling duty, but without Killian Hayes. I like going to Cade Cunningham a lot on FanDuel at 6K. He's one of the higher owned guys. I like getting above the field on him. It's a good Sacramento matchup. The pace should be there. How do you feel about this Detroit team without Killian Hayes? We saw Hamidou Diallo win people tournaments last night. I'm shying away a little bit off a guy like him, but with no Killian Hayes, how do you expect this backcourt rotation to look like?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're going to get Corey Joseph in the starting lineup. You'll get some more run from Saban Lee as well. At 3,500, Lee's another, I guess, like Melton pivot where he's not going to succeed nearly as often, but he's going to be a lot lower owned as well. Cade Cunningham is the guy that I see as the priority here, though, particularly on FanDuel. Like you said, he's really cheap, but 7,300 on DraftKings, too. This is the rare game where they're still 7-point dogs, but it's relatively unlikely that Detroit gets run off the floor. So Cunningham looks like a pretty high upside option in a good spot.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Do you know if Kelly Olynyk is going to play today?
He's probable.
He's probable. Okay. Coming back from a thing, the front court is a mess now in Detroit. There was a time it was just Stewart and Lyles. With Kelly Olynyk coming back, I have no idea what those minutes are going to look like. So, when he's going to be on there, he's going to take quite a bit of usage on this pretty bad Detroit team. So, one body goes, one body enters. So, do you have any interest in the Detroit front court?
No.
Okay. Neither do I. I do like this game in terms of like a fantasy environment. On the other side of things for Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox is someone I want to take my chances on for sure. At that price tag, I do think he's going to be pretty low on. I think he's a good pivot off of some higher owned guys than him. How do you feel about the Kings team outside of De'Aaron Fox?
I'm interested in Terrence Davis, assuming he stays in the starting lineup. You have Bagley back, but I think that's going to just basically turn into Bagley and Metu splitting minutes at the 4. Probably takes a few minutes away from Davis because Barnes is playing less at the 4. But I think it's likely you still get around 30 minutes from him at 5,300. He's a point per minute guy, so I'm interested there. And then Richaun Holmes is a really, really risky option that could absolutely just win you tournaments tonight. He only played like 15 minutes in his first game back. I think the best guess is that he plays like, 18 or 20 here. But if he just goes out there and plays a normal game and plays like 25 or 26 minutes at 4,400, he's arguably the best value on the slate outside of like Melton.
Yeah, I don't mind sprinkling him some Buddy Hield on Yahoo. He's $20, I believe. He's priced up at $5,800 on FanDuel. It's a very easy matchup. The minutes are always fluctuating with him. It's tournaments only over there. If Holmes comes back, it's a risky play. It doesn't make guys like Bagley or Metu that appealing whatsoever. Good game environment. I do think it wouldn't shock me if I see one guy definitely crack the winning lineup from this game tonight. On to the last game we go. The Pacers taking on the Lakers, the nightcap, I believe the ESPN game. Lakers are favored by 4.5 against this Indiana team. Indiana is obviously led by Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis comes in at 10-1, 9,400 and $41 on Yahoo. They are going to be without Miles Turner. Miles Turner is going to be gone for some time with a foot injury. This potentially opens up more Sabonis at the 5. There's another guy in Goga Batadze we saw get quite a bit of minutes. How do you feel, and what does your intuition tell you what this Pacers front court looks like?
So I think that I've seen a lot of people talk about Patadze. If he were to start here, then he's an interesting value. I don't think we'll have that news by lock. But the reason that I'm not really interested in him here is that I don't anticipate him closing. The Lakers are most likely going to close with LeBron James. I don't think you're getting Goga Batadze in the starting lineup or in the closing lineup rather, against LeBron James. So I don't really have a lot of interest in using a center spot there, especially because now, like, if I want to gamble on a backup center that's cheap, I can just go to Ennis Freedom. So I don't really see that. Sabonis is okay, but I think there's a lot of guys I like more. Really, the only thing that ends up looking appealing to me here is if Malcolm Brogdon sits, you get a bump in usage and assist percentage for Karis LeVert at 7,900, which would be pretty nice. But I'm also not holding a spot open for that with all of the other plays that I like.
Yeah. Any interest in a guy like O'Shea Brissett by any chance?
Not really, not on the slate.
No. Yeah, it crossed my mind with the whole Miles Turner situation. But yeah, LeVert is someone I do have some interest in only at $28 on Yahoo with or without Brogdon. But on to the last team of the night. Thanks so much, everyone, for bearing with us. I know we went a little bit over, but the Lakers team led by LeBron James and a $7,500 Russell Westbrook. What do we do with these two guys tonight?
Westbrook on FanDuel looks really good at 7,500. Like, the playing time has been down a little bit, especially obviously compared to LeBron. Like, the minutes aren't as consistent, but he's still around a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy on FanDuel at 7,500. LeBron on DraftKings got back his point guard small forward eligibility. 11-3 is fine. He's very, very good without Anthony Davis. But I think still, comes in behind guys like Harden and Jokic for me, although the positions are more appealing for LeBron. Yeah,
I really like LeBron James, another stud. I feel like there's a lot of value where you can mix match your studs throughout the slate today. So something that I tend to do on bigger slates. Stars and scrubs is more of a natural build. I think you would agree for tonight as well. But Adam, that was a ton of fun. I know we went a little bit over. My apologies, everyone. Hit the like button on the way out. Any final words for the slate?
No, that's it. Good luck.
All right. Good luck, everyone. Thanks so much. Hit the like button on the way out. Shout out to Prize Picks. And good luck, everyone. Hope someone takes something down.
What is going on, guys? It is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Prize Picks. Once again, I'm here joined by my friend and some of your friend, Eric Lindquist. We're sponsored by Prize Picks. Tyler's producing. We got a whole lot to talk about, 13 games. Kind of makes it impossible to talk about every single individual player on the slate. So at least how I like to approach these 13 games, and I'm the captain, I'm driving the ship, is going to try to focus on just the players we have the most exposure to at each position, maybe some contrarian plays. Of course, any questions you guys have, super chat, Discord chat, throw them at us. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, what's going on, man?
Not much. Obviously, 13 games. I guarantee you we're going to get 50 million comments about, oh, what about this guy? What about this guy? And it's like, I guarantee you 1 out of the million comments we get from it is going to go off. It's just that you can't roster every single dude. You know, I'm playing 190 lineups. I think, is that enough to get exposure to every player on a freaking 100 game slate?
Yep.
Is it?
You have you have every single lineup combination possible now.
Perfect. Then I'm fine. But otherwise, you know, this is something where somebody's going to be like, I can't believe X player was X low owned. You know, it's like, I get it. Everybody is on the top end. Going to come in randomly unowned in certain spots, whether it's a Fred VanVleet, who is going to play a zillion minutes, and we've seen upside from him. Even guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo is sub 5% on the DraftKings slate. DeJounte Murray, who's been crazy owned in so many of these spots, sub 15%. Luka Doncic, sub 5%. One of these guys is going to go nuts. I'm hopefully going to tell you which ones.
Yeah, and I'm going to need your guidance very much. No Warriors play, so there's no Juan Toscano-Anderson to roster. So I'm totally lost on this slate. Also, just so people know, the current key players that are on the injury report that are going to impact this slate that we're still waiting on. Drew Holiday is questionable. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable. Gary Trent is questionable. Carmelo Anthony is questionable. That one a little less so. The Gary Trent one, I'm not looking to play Gary Trent, but one thing that is pretty important about him is you just said Fred VanVleet. He's somebody who could go play a million minutes. Yeah, they played a 6-man rotation Champagne played 9 minutes.
He played 9 minutes. Yeah.
So essentially played a 6-man rotation, but there's a very, very concentrated minutes we should expect from the Raptors if Gary Trent is ruled out. That's why he's significant, but not too much time to dilly-dally here. So let's just go position by position, and starting with the guards here. I want to ask how you're handling DeAnthony Melton, because early in the day, I did think it was a little bit easier to find some pivots off of him. Not to say I didn't like Melton, I clearly did, but I was thinking, you know, there's some volatility with the minutes, how Memphis likes to mix up. Sometimes there will be times where it's like, hey, we think it's going to be Melton. Maybe it would be Tyus Jones. Adam had brought up on the strategy on the strategy show that he thought Tyus Jones could be a good pivot. Then guess what happens? Tyus Jones gets ruled out 5 minutes after that show ends. So there's no Kyle Anderson, no Dylan Brooks, no Desmond Bane, no Tyus Jones. I just don't see any way around getting to a lot of DeAnthony Melton now because he's a good fantasy producer and they've 4 active guards today.
Yeah, I think this is really also going to be something on FanDuel, because of how much softer the pricing is day to day. I think it's pretty easy to get some other paths to not play Melton. Conchar, however you want to say his name. I definitely have some serious interest there. Ryan and I talked last night on the Slate Starter Pod. He said he was like a 10K plus player in the summer league. Like, this guy can get there at a fantasy point per minute rate when other guys are off the floor here. Obviously, John Morant is still going to be the usage hog. He's going to be the main facilitator. He's going to be the main everything for this Memphis basketball team. Jaren Jackson Jr. got knocked out of that game for a hot second, and he's apparently fine. So no issues there. But I do think he ends up being the guy who gets the start. I think that might make Melton lose a little bit of rostership. And so I don't think we need to be panicking too much either way. He's not going to make or break my slate. I think I'm going to be about at the field over on DK. I think I'm going to be finding some ways to get off of him on FanDuel, just because I think with the softer pricing, there's more paths to like a quote unquote balanced build. We have so many great tournament plays, whether it's VanVleet of 8,500 on FanDuel, LaMelo Ball, 8,200. De'Aaron Fox is at 8K, and he's kind of in a remember me spot, sub 12% right now over on that slate. Russell Westbrook, 7,500. Guys on the more expensive end that I'm going to be prioritizing their ceilings. Can Melton go out and put up 30 at 4,100 and really make his way into an optimal? Sure. But I think there's value at like every position on FanDuel. So I'm less inclined to be holding hands with the field over there.
So I'm going to ask you then, if you're looking to play somebody who's around the same price point as DeAnthony Melton, and I'll ask you for DraftKings and FanDuel, who do you think the direct pivots are? So which guy, if you're looking to get off of Melton on DK, a 1v1 swap, who would be the guy you most look at? I have a name in mind. I'm kind of curious who you're going to throw out.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, this is now, I'm torn between like giving you my take and then also just being able to guess who your guy is. I mean, Joe Ingles is somebody that is 3,700 at the exact same number, but he's already popular at 32%. So I'm guessing that that's not going to be the guy. Who would be the direct guy? I mean, is it like Jalen Noel? Is that somebody that you're talking about? Or
I'm asking you for yours. You don't have to guess.
Okay,
mine.
John Concher is my guy. I mean, he's 3,600. I think he starts. He's a 0.85 fantasy point per minute player. I think everything kind of sets up for him to play nearly 32 minutes here in this spot. So I'm over the 23%. He's obviously coming in lower owned. He's now less than half the rostership that you have there of a guy like Melton. So I think at the exact same, $100 less, I think I'd be picking him. How about you?
All right, we're going with this early today. The GPP play of the slate. Here it is for me. Bones Highland. So Bones Highland, I have Melton projected better than Bones Highland. I don't have Highland that much further behind him, though. And last couple of games, 37 and 33 minutes for Bones Highland. I understand there was no Austin Rivers, and there was also blowouts that played a factor. But I think Highland has played well enough, and there's enough injuries to the Denver Nuggets roster that I think we could see over 20 minutes from Bones Highland today, maybe even close to 30. If that is the case, I don't think he should be projected all that much differently from DeAnthony Melton. Here is the difference, though. We've got Bones Highland right now is projected for 5% ownership on DK compared to 48% ownership for DeAnthony Melton. Same salary, though. No real difference there. Over on FanDuel, Bones Highland, 4,600. He's projected for less than 1% ownership compared to DeAnthony Melton at 4,100, projected to be nearly half the field's lineups. That's the GPP play of the day, Eric. Deal with it. What do you think?
Deal with it.
What do you think?
I understand it. I mean, it's shown up in the box score, obviously, the last three. He put up the 50 burger, 33 minutes, 37 minutes. I'm not expecting 33 and 37 minutes. I don't think you are either. I mean, he's projected here at Awesemo 21 and a half. For me, it's just a simple fact that Austin Rivers comes back. Pay attention to the starting lineup. He's going to probably be in it, I would assume. And that becomes a problem because he plays big minutes. Even in relief there, 27 minutes. He played a little bit of blowout run against Portland in that last game that he appeared on the 13th. It's been a week. So maybe he ends up kind of on the lower end. We've seen some competitive games, even where he started, where he only played 19 minutes, 17 minutes. There's a large enough range of outcomes with Austin Rivers that I'm at least concerned about it. But sub 5%, you're talking about a guy that is also sub 4K on DraftKings. I think GPP play, I mean, are we talking like 25% of your lineups? Are we talking like a large allotment? Because like I could see getting to like 5%, 6% of him, but nothing more for me.
No, it's double digit ownership for me. Once again, I really do have Highland projected for. I only have him a couple fantasy points behind Melton right now. And to me, I just look at the big ownership. Yeah, keep in mind, less than 1% owned on FanDuel. Yeah. I have him projected for 0.1% ownership. Nobody's rostering. I understand he only has point guard eligibility, which does make it a little bit restrictive in terms of the amount of positions we could play him in. And certainly because of the flexibility, he's a little easier to get to on DK. But still, I want to have him in more than 0.1% of lineups. If you play 150 lineups on FanDuel, you play one of them with Bones Highland, you're overweight to the field on him. And same DraftKings. If you play 20 lineups, you have Bones Highland in one of them, you're overweight to the field on him. So that's the other lens I'm looking at it as. And no, I don't think he should be in 50% of lineups like Melton. But I'm just saying if you're playing a handful of tournament lineups and you're looking for some pivots, I think Highland makes sense there.
Okay. I see your logic with it. Again, for me, I'm not as high as you are on it. I think there's enough variance that exists there. I've actually seen his name bounced around a couple of times. I mean, YouTube chat is always a good barometer. Hello, all my friends. Most of my friends, I would say. Some people hate me. It's fine. But
friends, enemies. What's the difference?
Friends, enemies. You know what? Either way, it's clout for me. So here we go. I think I understand your logic. I think I'm just using it maybe in different spots. For me, if I'm not going to be playing some DeAnthony Melton, I'm probably just looking at some more balanced builds altogether.
I mean, that's also not a bad way to look at it. And actually, I kind of think this slate on the whole, there are a lot of plays in the, like, this isn't a true stars and scrubs slate for me. I get the Melton sheep, Conchar sheep, Highland sheep, some of the guys we've talked about here,
Agreed.
but it's not like I'm going all the way up. It's not like this is a slate where I'm getting to like 80% Jokic, Giannis, or any of those guys. There really are a lot of players, a lot of it because of the Utah Jazz guys, whether it be Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, that I am looking to build in the mid-range. And that's the next thing I want to ask you about is, I know you briefly talked about Joe Ingles there, but of these other players that are going to be chalked that have guard eligibility today, Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, you don't talk about Joe Ingles again, but how are you handling the Utah chalk guys at guard?
Oh man, there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning and seeing Joe Ingles at like 33%. Like legitimately, no worse feeling could be had, because we've seen some relief appearances where he plays 32 minutes and just, puts up a serviceable number. For me, I'm hitting pass at Joe Ingles over on FanDuel, 3,700 for him over there. Again, it's softer pricing. I'm less inclined to play more of him and more of Melton over there. So, I mean, I'm playing 50 lineups, and they're whatever the $4 thingy it is. I'm playing over there, and it's like, I just think that I'm going to be shying away from those two over there. But sub 4K over on DraftKings, I'm probably going to embrace it a little bit more. I'm going to be short of the field, I think, on both Melton and Ingles there, and try to find other places to make stronger stands. But that does not mean by any way, shape, or form that I'm just going to flat out fade those guys. I just don't want them to make or break my entire night. So I think just being a little bit under the field makes a lot of sense on DK for me there.
Yeah, and then one other thing, because I know people are going to push back against Joe Ingles today, and I think he's about appropriately owned to be, in terms of where I look at my ownership versus the field, very, very similar. We're looking at him in about a third of the field's lineups on DK. FanDuel also in about a third of the field's lineups, 33 to 30%. Here's the situation with Joe Ingles. Donovan Mitchell is out, and I understand a lot of people just go, hey, Joe Ingles sucks. Yeah, he's been terrible for fantasy this year. But still, we've seen him make a handful of starts this year, and here are his results as a starter. And keep in mind, most of these starts were when Mike Conley was out, not when Donovan Mitchell was out. When Donovan Mitchell is out, that means more usage is available in the offense. But overall this year, Joe Ingles, when he starts, he's made 9 starts, 28 minutes per game, 21 fantasy points in those starts. Considering his price point, that's not an awful result. Is it earth-shattering? Is it something to be like, I have to play this guy? No, but you should be playing him in cash games. And even for tournaments, if you're playing multiple lineups, get exposure to Joe Ingles, because he is still somebody who's going to he's going to be on the court for a decent amount. He's cheap, and there's probably extra shots going to him. So do you think any of these Utah Jazz guys are going way over-owned at the guard position?
Yeah, not way over-owned. I mean, Melton, if you look at our boom bust tool, which again is just such an easy way to get a good gauge on the slate, Jordan Clarkson, negative 12% leverage there. We've got Bojan Bogdanovic, negative 13.8% leverage. D'Anthony Melton, actually the most negatively leveraged at 25% negative leverage. Like, we're looking at some massive negative leverage. The thing is that you still have to get those pivots right. And on a 13-game slate, when you're pivoting away from some of these spots, you're really kind of taking a risk. So I think you have to be able to inherit some of this chalk here. Jordan Clarkson, I think, is the guy that I feel the most comfortable with. Over the course of the last year with Donovan Mitchell off the floor, he sees a 30.5% usage rate compared to a guy like, Rudy Gay, 21%, Mike Conley, 21.2%, Rudy Gobert, 20.5%. From a fantasy point per minute rate, 1.06 fantasy points per minute, 30 minutes where you might get a little bit of extra bump to that rate, considering you won't have Mike Conley on the floor. I'm sure he's going to be, I don't assume that he's going to be starting. I think Ingles is the presumed starter in this spot, but Mike Conley, 1 fantasy point per minute rate as well is decent enough. I don't think any of them you need to be like flat out hitting the eject button on just because they have negative leverage in the boom bust tool. But I do want to shy away from having 3-4 of these guys in lineups. I'm going to be capping it like 2 Utah players. And I think for me, Clarkson and Gobert are the 2 that come to the top.
So now I'm going to ask you, because I just sorted all my lineups by Utah Jazz players, and I'm curious which Utah players in order of, because there's really 5 ones that are viable. I don't think you have to go way off the board with, or you don't have to go way off the board with Utah Jazz guys and be like, oh my God, I'm playing Eric Pascal or Denzel Valentine today. I don't think you have to go that crazy, but so what we'll call, of Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gobert, Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley, Royce O'Neal, those 6. What is the order of exposure you have to them from most to least?
Let me pull that up. Do you care about site, DraftKings or FanDuel?
We could do it for both. I actually think I have the same on both sites. Let me check to see if that's the case.
Clarkson is 1 for me. Gobert is 2. Bogdanovic is 3. Ingles is 4. Conley is 5.
Okay. By the way, I was wrong. I don't have the same order on DraftKings and FanDuel. So here's it for me on here it is for me on DraftKings. Clarkson 1, Gobert 2, Ingles 3, Bogdanovic 4, Conley 5, Royce O'Neal 6. Over on FanDuel, it's Bogdanovic 1, Conley 2, Ingles 3, Clarkson 4, Gobert 5, and then Royce O'Neal 6. Center's just different on FanDuel, where there's only, so that's really what causes the big difference is only rostering 1 center on FanDuel just reduces the amount of spots there are for Gobert.
And Gobert's 33% over on FanDuel. So I think there's more paths to trying to scattershot with the 2/3 of the field that aren't playing Gobert.
Yep, I think that's a totally reasonable way to look at it. As for other guards, is there anybody you're really prioritizing spending up for at the guard position? Once again, this is a slate where, Jokic at center, that's always a fairly obvious pay up option if you have the space for it. It's not a slate where I'm going to be getting to a massive amount of any one pay up option. But is there any pay up option that you are prioritizing on FanDuel and DK at the guard position today?
James Harden. James Harden's sub 5% over on DK. He's 11-6. There's no Kevin Durant. Of course, there's Kyrie Irving alongside it as well. And I know that if you look at Odd Shopper, I know that there was a video that Taylor Mathis had put out earlier. Again, you can check all of our Odd Shopper content where you talk about shorting his points prop. 26.5 is something you can maybe do over there. But for DFS purposes, we're talking about James Harden without Kevin Durant on the floor, and having the ability to kind of create and do whatever he wants to. I think him and Kyrie are both guys that I like, but specifically, James Harden has the kind of ceiling that I think is just going a little bit underappreciated on this slate. He's sub 5%. He's lower owned. He's less than half the ownership of LeBron James, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. He's around the same as Luka Doncic. You can maybe say some of the same things there, but that total is just so low. A 208 total, game environment not ideal, going up against Toronto that slows it up a little bit. But way less owned than John Morant. I just think James Harden is being slept on a little bit for the kind of ceiling that he has. And when you can get a 70+ ceiling at sub 5% on any kind of a slate, I'm at least going to play 15-20% of that almost every single time, regardless of the size of the slate.
We just got some news here. Alex Caruso will be limited to around 22 to 24 minutes. Not massively surprising. To be honest, 24 minutes is actually a little more than I was expecting from him. I gave him 20 minutes. Dosunmu, I don't think is a real option on DK, just where he's been priced up pretty considerably. On FanDuel, though, he is at 4,200. Mm-hmm. How do you view him now that we have Alex Caruso in the mix and still remains cheap, but going to be a restriction on Caruso? Where's the ownership on Dosunmu? Only projected for 8.5% ownership on FanDuel. I don't have him projected particularly well, and it does seem like a lot of people are fairly high on him today.
I mean, this is kind of one of those things where maybe this is the Bones Highland of this situation, so to speak, where Bones has played really well in the relief of somebody. And you would think that maybe that earns him some extra minutes, but we have seen some massive floors out of AO. So like for me, it would be something where as long as he stays sub 10%, I think you can still sprinkle him in. I didn't get to any of him in my 50 lineups over on FanDuel whatsoever today. Maybe I get to one or two of them here as I adjust those minutes. I mean, you put him in even at 33 minutes, the guy isn't like some world beater. He's a 0.66 fantasy point per minute player. Now, of course, you have Levine off the floor, Lonzo Ball off the floor. That helps out a lot in that regard. But I think it's all right at 4,200 if you want to get to a little bit. This is no way like the last slate that he appeared on where, it was a 6-game slate for that early FanDuel slate. And it was so hard to get away from Mayo Chalk. Although I know my boy Rinpack said on the slate starter that he did, but Dosunmu, that's just such a volatile piece. As long as he's low owned, I think it's fine. But, Alex Caruso, we had him in for right around 26 minutes. You bring it down a couple, maybe given a minute or two extra to AO there, 35 minutes. I think he's serviceable, just not a priority still.
Yeah, if somebody had exposure to him, I wouldn't say you have to take him out of the lineup. I just think the 4,200 is a more fair price point than I think most people give it credit for, especially with Alex Caruso back. Because like you said, this guy's been terrible for fantasy over the course of the year. He's put up 2 good games in a row. I get he's a young player. Maybe the reason I think he's made improvements, but it's hard for me to buy into, like you said, somebody who's around a 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy for the season. You give him the 30 minutes or so he's going to play, I barely get over 20 fantasy points from him. So I think he's viable, but I think a lot of people, I think he's going to be higher owned than what the ownership projection is, just based on how I've seen some people talk about him today. And I don't really totally buy into Dosunmu as being a great piece of value. Who are the other guards that we've not yet talked about that you have a lot of exposure to? Now, obviously, this can't encapsulate everybody. It's a 13-game slate. There's going to be a lot of guys we have 5 to 10% ownership to that we can't be talking about all of them. But who are the ones that are priorities to a guard that we haven't brought up yet?
The most disgusting feeling that I have in the entire world today is on FanDuel, where I'm playing a lot of a $7,500 Westbrook.
Yes.
Like, I hate everything. Like, I'm going to be playing this guy at 6,500, I'm sure. It's just like, I don't care. It's Russell Westbrook. We have a long enough sample size of him not being a good real life player, but being awesome at fantasy. Still 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Like on the season, we're going to be projecting him for right around those same 33, 32 minutes here. Some wonky spots here of late, the Utah game where he only played 28, 26 against Denver, but that was in an annihilation spot. Sacramento, he played 37. I mean, if you project him for 32, 33 minutes with that 1.13, 1.15, like it's ridiculous. He's so hard for me to get away from. I'm double the field on 20% there. And I don't feel great about it, but that feels like another guy. Otherwise, you can take scatter shots on all these Utah guys. But how do you feel about Westbrook at that number? Because on DK, you don't have to consider it, but FanDuel, he's a huge talking point, I think, of the slate.
Yeah, it's hard for me to get away from it 7,500. I do wonder if we just all have to adjust his baselines. Do you know the last time that we saw a ceiling game from Russell Westbrook? Like, when do you think the last time is that we saw Russell Westbrook score over 52 fantasy points?
Was he wearing a Washington Wizards uniform?
No, it was this year. it was the game against Sacramento that went to double overtime in November.
That's right.
It's been a really long time. And I know we just have this assumption, Russ, and to be clear, I'm playing him at 7,500 on FanDuel. But there's a part of me that just says, is he a bit washed here? And to the point where not just it's impacting him in real life to where he's going viral by shooting bricks off the side of the backboard every day, because there's one of those highlights that comes out every single night. But beyond that, his recent, it's just not even good from a fantasy perspective, which you've never seen from him before. Because there have been games where Russell Westbrook has struggled in real life, but still, he gets his triple-double, the team loses, whatever, no big deal. We haven't even seen him score 40 fantasy points since this year. Actually, he hasn't done it. We had to go back to December to find a game where he scored over 40. Impossible for me to ignore Russell Westbrook when he's only 7,500. But what kind of exposure are you getting to him right now on FanDuel?
Yeah, I have 44%, so I'm just over double the field.
Okay.
It's kind of where I'm at on it. And, again, 50 lineups, pretty easy to do the math on that. It's just such a hard spot to get away from. That number just keeps plummeting. Like it's hard to even look at that number and not think that, wow, he's the fourth highest owned guard on the slate. I know it's 13 games and, Cade Cunningham continues to be 6K for some inexplicable reason there. I think John Morant is just fine against Milwaukee. Drew Holiday defense back there, but I don't really care. I think there's some paths for him for a shorthanded Memphis team here for him to play even maybe a couple extra minutes, which might make up for some of that. Not that, there's much more room for it, but he has played 31, 32 minutes here of late. If you put him in for 35, 36 minutes, that outweighs any kind of Drew Holiday defense considerations I have there. For me, De'Aaron Fox is the other big guy that I'm taking a stand on over on FanDuel today. He's 8K. And I find it hard to believe that without Tyrese Halliburton there, that he isn't going to be creating and doing just about everything for the Sacramento team against Denver. I mean, they're only 7-point favorites this game. I don't have a ton of blowout concerns or anything whatsoever there, but with no Halliburton there on the floor, Terrence Davis, I don't even know if he ends up in that starting rotation. And he's more of a talking point for FanDuel than he is on DK, where he's really priced up. But I don't know if Terrence Davis automatically ends up in the starting lineup. Marvin Bagley had been starting constantly when he was there. Obviously now he's missed one or two games here, and
one game. Yeah.
One game. So like Marvin Bagley, I would think comes back and starts. And I don't want to get stuck with a ton of Terrence Davis there at 30% on FanDuel. For me, I'm just kind of getting over the field on De'Aaron Fox. I think that's a pretty easy path where Terrence Davis might fail in the event that one, he doesn't play well or doesn't start. And De'Aaron Fox, I just have no qualms, will be the guy who goes out and creates and shoots a lot for Sacramento.
We do have a super chat here from Brad Kaufman, which we'll answer, and then I'm going to follow up with some King's thoughts. And we could also transition to forward off that because Terrence Davis, shooting guard and small forward eligibility. Brad Kaufman is asking Harden or Ja Morant for high stakes single entry. I prefer Harden today.
What were the two? Sorry, one more time.
Harden or Morant.
Oh, I love Harden so much today. Again, I'm just making a stand on him. He's small forward eligible on FanDuel as well. Sorry if I said Denver. I did mean Detroit. I apologize. I think everybody knows that Sacramento's playing Detroit today. Apologize.
So
you said that.
Also, just on the Harden point, do you have interest in Irving? Is he also somebody you're getting exposure to today, or just more Harden?
I'm getting to a little bit of Kyrie. I mean, he's cheaper over on FanDuel, and we're seeing some big minutes now for Kyrie Irving. Obviously, they're only playing him in half of the games going forward. So 8,900 for him. I did say that I think they're going to run Kyrie into the ground on these road games. Just play him 38 minutes, 40 minutes here going forward. We have him projected for 37. And I think 8,900 over on FanDuel Yeah, that looks really, really appealing. I think on DK, I'm getting to a little bit, but for me, it's just like looking for that massive ceiling and finding a way to really get different. James Harden's sub 5% over there, and Kyrie Irving, is sub 4% on DK. I think, a little bit of Kyrie and a lot of bit of James Harden is kind of the path I'm taking.
All right, so let's talk about Terrence Davis. Now, like you said, he's sub 10% owned on DK, so not as much of a talking point there. On FanDuel, though, and let me refresh to see what the most recent run of ownership is. Last I looked, he was projected for a little bit over 30% ownership, and we have a more. Do we have same ownership number from before? So yeah, 30.2% projected ownership for Terrence Davis, one of the most popular plays on the slate today. Here's my stance on Terrence Davis. The upside is really significant for him, but the floor is really, really low. I do think he starts, and I actually don't think that Bagley coming back is going to impact the starting position for Terrence Davis. I thought early in the day it might have, but realistically, I think the front court is going to be Bagley starting alongside Rashawn Holmes, and then the backcourt is going to be Fox, Barnes, and Terrence Davis. I think that we just see it's a 1-for-1 swap. Terrence Davis starting in place of Tyrese Halliburton. But I don't think that means that Terrence Davis closes. Davion Mitchell could close the game. Buddy Hield could close the game. And that's where Marvin Bagley has an impact on this team, is down the stretch. We could see the Kings play more bigger lineups. And that's also why I really like Marvin Bagley as a GPP play today, because I think people are totally sleeping on how well Marvin Bagley played from a fantasy standpoint right before he missed that one game. Last 2 games before he went out, against the Lakers, he scored 31 fantasy points. Then he scored 48 against the Houston Rockets. That was the game where we had Rashawn Holmes is questionable, where you and I both said that we thought that Bagley could make for a really good late swap option if Rashawn Holmes is going to be out. Nobody played Bagley. He went off. And then once again, just nobody's playing Marvin Bagley. Everybody's gravitating towards Terrence Davis. The reason to me Bagley's a really good pivot is because there is this chance that the Kings play bigger lineups. Bagley, when he's on the court, he's going to score around a fantasy point per minute. And every minute that he gets out on the court is a chance for less playing time for Terrence Davis. So I don't have an issue with Terrence Davis on FanDuel. I think his ownership is too high, but I like Marvin Bagley a whole bunch as a pivot.
That's where I'm at. I just think it's too high. And again, this is coming from me who had 100% of him, but he was 3,500 on that Sunday slate, or, on the 16th is the last time they played. So it just made sense to lock him in, I think, that day. That was such a wonky day where Sacramento was really, really shorthanded, and you just got to a ton of exposure to some of those guys. Fox ended up being the guy who really buried me, but De'Aaron Fox, I think at 8K is kind of the guy. He got ejected in that game too. He got the double tech and was gone pretty early, only played 26 minutes. We also have to consider De'Aaron Fox comes in, you put him in for 34 and a half minutes, and you play Terrence Davis, 23, 24 minutes. He's just not going to grade out as well. Now, is he serviceable at 4,400? And does he have a massive ceiling if he gets it going? Sure. But I always look at him more of like a Terrence Ross guy, where if he gets it going, you're going to really, really need him. And if he doesn't, you're going to really, really want to be off of him.
Yep. I would feel different about Terrence Davis if his ownership was lower.
Same.
But I don't want to play him at his price point on DK, and FanDuel is just a little bit too popular for me. Today's show, by the way, is sponsored by Prize Picks. Going to make sure to get in this read before we get anything crazy. Like we might get swamped by news, and then there would be a point of no return. So shout out to Prize Picks, who is sponsoring today's show. Also, I'm sure you guys are hip to this by now. Eric and I, 30 minutes after lock, just because the slate starts doesn't mean him and I are going anywhere. We're going to be sticking around, sweating the games and talking about Prize Picks, looking at Odd Shopper and trying to find some of the best props to play over on Prize Picks. If you're signing up at Prize Picks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, and you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All right, Eric, let's talk about some of the other forwards now. We talked about the Terrence Davis situation. Who are the forwards you're getting the most exposure to tonight?
Yeah, so let me pull up DK FanDuel. We kind of just talking both as we go.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Okay. Looking at the top end, obviously, I think getting to some of these studs is not a terrible way to go. I have kind of I guess this is a hot take because he's 6%, but I really like Domantas Sabonis. It was kind of a wonky situation here. Miles Turner is going to be out for a while, and against the Clippers there, Goga Bitadze ended up playing 25 minutes, and I don't really expect Goga to be playing that many minutes for this team going forward. They have a number of wings, but Domantas Sabonis, I'm waiting for this Malcolm Brogdon news, and it's in the late night hammers, so maybe I can find some paths to get off of a little bit in the event that you do have Malcolm Brogdon out there, because I think that would be a huge kind of ding to Domantas Sabonis. But Like legitimately 10-1 for him. He's 6%. I am triple the field, considering going even a little bit more for him there. I just don't think he's going to be splitting the floor with Goga this much going forward. 25 minutes next to Domantas Sabonis is 34. If you get 37, 38 minutes, which is what we've seen in some of these relief spots for it, I mean, Indiana just has these games that are starting to shoot out. This Lakers team is as well. 225 total doesn't look as appealing, but like legitimately getting no ownership. And that's kind of the same deal with James Harden that I'm kind of doing with Sabonis, where it's just a stud that's kind of standing out. You've got guys like LeBron James coming in with 11%. You've got other guys around him, Jason Tatum, 12%, which, you're fine. None of these guys are going to be that rostered, and you can kind of pick your guys. But I just think Sabonis is going slept on a little bit on the top end. So I'm finding myself getting there in kind of an extreme way.
If Malcolm Brogdon ends up playing, what would you be doing with your Sabonis shares then?
I mean, you have a $1,200 difference. I'm hoping that I'd have the news to kind of react to it. I'll have some exposure to Denver, to Sacramento, Detroit. It's kind of a messy situation here at guard, but maybe have a roster spot or two there. We have the 6 p.m. my time, make fake time, if you will, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Utah and Houston are playing. I think we've all got some Utah interest. Gives me an extra hour and a half to kind of figure out if he's going to be playing here or not. We've traditionally been getting that news about an hour and a half before the lock time of those Indiana games. It usually comes at about halfway through the deeper dive, if I remember correctly, for Indiana being out there. So I'm assuming we get it close to around 6 o'clock my time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So maybe you'll be able to react and have a little bit. But if I get stuck with Sabonis, it's not like the ceiling still isn't there. I won't be panicking by any means, but that might just be 25% of my lineups that are in a little bit of trouble. But still, the ceiling still exists for him.
I'm calling bullshit on you not panicking. There is absolutely going to be a point in time in our chat where you're freaking out about it. It might not be the Sabonis that you trust me. I know you better than you know yourself, Eric. At some point today, you are going to be panicking about something.
Somebody's I'm very calm, Greg Ehrenberg. I've never gotten upset one time because of late swap or late news.
Yep, we'll see. I'll be holding you to that in our group chat. We actually have a pretty good question here from CS, a super chat, which was something I want to bring up next. So I'm happy that he brings it up. He did leave us a super chat. You guys liking Atlanta, Okongwu good versus Giannis? I wouldn't look at it as Okongwu versus Giannis, but I certainly like Okongwu quite a bit as a value play. And then you also asked about DeAndre Hunter. So let's talk about some of these Atlanta guys, because the Atlanta Hawks, Clint Capella, he's out. Bogdanovich, he is out. There's a whole bunch of playing time and usage to go around in Atlanta right now. And I think all of these guys make some bit of sense. DeAndre Hunter, Danilo Gallinari, Kevin Huerter, all guys I want to get to. We're going to talk about Okongwu in a second when we get to center. I think he's one of the top value plays on this slate. But what are you doing with the guys like Hunter, Gallo, and Huerter today?
I mean, Kevin Huerter, the hero of the people, if you will. I mean, I'm going to be connected to that guy for a little while. I like him very much. So $5K for him there. I think it's fine. I find Atlanta to kind of be a team I think is going a little bit overowned in this spot. I get it. Minnesota matchup, Minnesota on a back-to-back. It checks some boxes here. DeAndre Hunter, he's been cheap. He's been popular in a lot of these spots. And now the minutes have started trending up 30, 35 the last two. I just don't expect 27.5% usage from him going forward. Like that just feels a little bit extreme. You had a guy like Kevin Huerter playing 37 minutes. I'm more inclined to just kind of take the guys who are garnering no attention there. John Collins, Kevin Huerter, I'm over the 10%. John Collins, I'm a little over 10.4%, not by much. Danilo Gallinari, kind of a direct pivot, I would suppose, on his own team there off of DeAndre Hunter. I just think Hunter's going a little bit overrepresented on the slate. Okongwu at the center position, it's absolutely loaded, but he's definitely at a 0.95 fantasy point per minute rate. Definitely somebody you have to be considering. Playing 30 plus minutes, no Capella, checks a lot of boxes as well. So I'm happy getting to a little bit, but like, do we expect Trae Young to have 27% usage as opposed to like these games mid 30s is kind of what he's been averaging in relief of some of these guys? Like Trae Young is going to have more usage than what we saw there that he succeeded to DeAndre Hunter last game. So I have some pause, I suppose, with some of the more popular pieces of Atlanta.
Fair enough. Okongwu is somebody who I like quite a bit. Teasing that. We'll talk about that at center. Also, not as popular as I think he should be. Ryan has left us a super chat asking us for FanDuel GPP, Precious /Sharp /LaMarcus Aldridge, and why Conley over Clarkson. So for me, Conley and Clarkson on DK, I prefer Clarkson. On FanDuel, I prefer Conley. not really all that complicated. The reason why on FanDuel, at least, they're about the same price point. I have Conley projected better. Easier for me to give Conley more minutes than it is for Clarkson. Conley's going to start. Clarkson's likely to come off the bench. On DK, why it's different is Jordan Clarkson is $500 cheaper than Conley, and he's point guard and shooting guard eligible versus Conley on DK only having point guard eligibility. So Clarkson I prefer on DK. I get to more on FanDuel. I prefer Conley. That's the main reason why. But as for the other part of his question, Precious, Sharp, or LaMarcus Aldridge, which of those do you like the most?
Right now, I like Precious the most. So I was kind of expecting Aldridge to start. I was adjusting that here. That game starts here in 15 minutes. So obviously these first two games, Orlando, Philly, and Brooklyn, Washington, that's really the only players that I'm concerned with, until the next batch of games kind of starts up. But I like Precious Achiuwa a lot. Gary Trent, I've thought he was going to play for like every game for the last week or so, but I've still loaded up with Precious Achiuwa. I know that we were like in between shows where I hopped on and basically was talking to you about him being a guy that I was already really heavy on. And I was kind of bummed out. The Trent news came out as early as it was. I'm loaded up on him again tonight. Like, I think he's much more interesting for me on FanDuel, where he has power forward eligibility, and I don't have to be giving up that important center spot as much, but I'm still going to get to him on DK. I mean, it's still a great price point for him. 4,500 for him on FanDuel. He's played 39 and 37 minutes. And, he generally has been around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute player here in his career. So like, there's definitely some massive upside if you get that kind of minutes. I mean, Toronto played 6.5 dudes like last game. So there's no doubt about it. No Gary Trent equals lots of Precious for me.
But what if Trent plays?
Then you just hit eject and you have 0. How about that?
Fair enough. I was kind of just
then
wondering.
It would be
LMA. Wait. Don't tell. Are you going to panic if that happens? Are you going to panic?
I don't like you. This is
You're
more
bullying.
bullying. This is bullying. We have an HR now. I just want to warn you. We have an HR.
Yeah, well, you could file any complaint you want about me. It is not going to stick, and YouTube chat is going to have my back. We have a question here from Jeff Williams. Any worries with the trade rumors of Sabonis and Fox? No, there's a reason why they're called rumors and not, trade facts or anything like that, because they just don't happen. And a lot of this is BS too. So here's my quick take on what's happening with the Philadelphia 76ers rumor. They want to trade Ben Simmons. They don't want to play Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons doesn't want to play there. So they're floating all these rumors to Philadelphia 76ers, and I don't think any of them have truth. But what Daryl Morey is trying to do is drum up interest and make teams panic, like some people on the show do from time to time. They think, oh my God, we have to make a Godfather offer for Ben Simmons to get him right now. So that's why he leaks stuff to Pompey, who's one of the top Sixers beat reporters, and say like, hey, the 76ers and the Kings are discussing this Fox or Halliburton trade that's going to involve draft picks, going to involve Ben Simmons, which Shams has already shot down and said there's no truth to that rumor. But that's just Daryl Morey's going to one of his guys who covers his team, is like, hey, I do you favors. I leak you information. You leak this for me. I don't think there's any real truth to it. Certainly don't change any of the exposure in your lineups based on rumors unless somebody actually gets traded.
Okay. Great talk. I loved it.
Okay. Adam Palmer, $2 super chat. Team Eric.
Yay!
There you go.
He likes me.
Go.
That makes one. I'm happy about that.
All right.
I like you too, Adam Palmer.
Yeah, he could be HR now. Any other
you made
forwards?
That sound like he's my daddy. You can be HR now. Yeah.
Hey, he could be. So I guess one other forward that we should talk about before we move on. Al Horford, there's no Time Lord today. Time Lord is Robert Williams. Some people were confused earlier when they saw Time Lord is out and asked, who is that? Time Lord is Robert Williams, the guy who's been playing center for the Celtics, has been crushing it as of late. Al Horford's really seen his playing time start to dip because of how well Robert Williams is playing. But now that Williams is out, Al Horford's going to step in and play bigger minutes. I think he's a really strong points per dollar play. Do you feel any differently about Al Horford and any other forwards that we should bring up before we move on to center?
Yeah, I was going to not play him with Robert Williams back, and now I feel like you kind of have to. I mean, it's just a minutes thing. It's an opportunity thing. It feels like a pretty secure piece to put into the mix on FanDuel, especially. I was looking at hitting eject on it. I mean, I had 4% in my run pre Robert Williams getting ruled out. Now that he's out, I've got 44%, and I don't think that that's going to change. He's just too cheap. He's over a fantasy point per minute rate guy. He's going to be, there's really nobody that's going to be behind him. As much as people want to make Enes Freedom a thing, I just don't see Enes Freedom playing enough minutes. Al Horford's going to get the majority of them. I just think he's a decent enough piece at 5,100 to mix into lineups. And, I'll find other ways to spike some upside. Do I think he can put up 45 in this spot? Probably not. But like, he's 5,100 on FanDuel. That's really unavoidable for me.
Yeah, and it's not that long ago that he was a lot more expensive than this. What changed was not that Al Horford started to play poorly from a points per minute perspective. The points per minute production was still okay, just the minutes weren't there anymore. You don't have to go back that far to find Al Horford to be significantly more expensive than what he is right now. You go back 2 weeks ago, he was 6,800. So certainly a little bit of a price discount here on Horford with Robert Williams out. Who are the other core plays for you at power forward that we haven't talked about yet?
Power forward.
Just forward in general. Power forward or small forward. Yeah.
Let me just click on in here as we're going. Everything's taking forever for it to update, and I don't know why. On my end,
13 games. That's why it's a lot of players.
Yeah, it's a lot of players. Everything's just in terms of the crunches and such. But Bogdanovich, coming in around the field on him, that's fine. John Collins, I talked about. I'm a little bit over. He's actually now come down to around 9%. I think at 7K, he's very, very intriguing. They can go to some small ball lineups with him at the 5 in absence of Okongwu. I guess you could probably put in, if I had more time, I'd probably put in something where I had a tiny bit of a rate decrease where I didn't get as much of Okongwu and John Collins in the same lineups, because I think there's a tiny bit of negative correlation that can exist there. John Collins going nuts would definitely be a thing. Over on FanDuel, Bobby Portis, I don't know what's going on, but like legitimately he's 6,300 every slate. I keep playing him every slate. He's only 18.8% now. I'm way over that number. It sucks because he just hasn't done anything with it. And now you're getting Drew Holiday back into the mix, but that doesn't change the fact that there's really no DeMarcus Cousins backing him up there anymore. They're not going to play Sandro Mamukashvili out there very much. Played 6 minutes last time out. So like legitimately, there's no resistance to him playing 35 minutes if he gets it going here. The one thing I'm worried, if they just blow Memphis out, but you can't be worried about blowout. 6-point spread here on a 13-game slate. I just think his price point is just unavoidable for me on FanDuel.
Yep, I think that totally makes sense. One other thing I'm going to shout out here. If Drew Holiday ends up getting ruled out, Giannis to me is somebody to try to prioritize as a spend-up option. I think Drew ends up playing today. We've seen him out for an extended period of time. Now he's finally listed as questionable. We haven't gotten news there. I think he ends up playing in somewhat limited minutes. If he's out, though, it's a little bit extra usage that goes to Giannis and a lot more playing time, because we've seen in games with Holiday, Giannis is generally low 30s minutes. Recent games without Holiday, we're looking at like 36 to 38 minutes for Giannis. So more of a priority play on him if Drew Holiday ends up being ruled out. Let's jump over to center now. And we only got 8 minutes to go into lock odds, but just because we get to lock, don't go anywhere. Eric and I are going to be sticking around. We're going to be talking about odd shop. We're going to be talking about props. We're going to be talking about prize picks and, of course, sweating to the games. Eric won't be panicking, but we're going to be sweating the games and seeing what's going on there. So like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and stick around after lock for our 30-minute post-lock show. Let's start by talking about Okongwu at the center position. One of my favorite overall plays on the slate. And I had a little bit of concerns earlier today. Are they going to do something wonky? Are they going to start Gorgie Jang? Because we saw them do that just a couple of games ago where they started Jang over Okongwu, and we thought Okongwu was going to start. But early today, they announced Okongwu will be the starting center for the Atlanta Hawks. I can't project him for this many minutes, but he played 36 last game. And just the fact that he could potentially play those many minutes makes him a really strong value option for me. How are you handling Okongwu with Capella out?
Yeah, so Okongwu, where you have a 2 center site, you can kind of mix and match some of these upsides. He's definitely somebody that you need to have some involvement with. I mean, again, I like him. Center's just so stacked that you can really find some upsides. I'm not just talking like going up to Nikola Jokic or Rudy Gobert, who's garnering a ton of attention as well, but there's some guys getting slept on in this mid range as well. Bobby Portis is 7K over on DK. Just 5%. I mean, he's just like a guy who's a smash in this mid-range. You can take that Day'Ron Sharp chance. I don't think you really need to here on the slate. Rashawn Holmes is 4,400, and we're talking about Okongwu right now, 4,600. In the event that Okongwu goes nuts and I don't have him, I'm getting onto a ton of Rashawn Holmes in kind of like the similar spot. But like, I just think that he's probably the most important piece for me at the center spot on DK. I just don't think people understand that in 20 minutes of Rashawn Holmes, he could completely break this slate open. You get 24 minutes at his 1.05 fantasy point per minute rate. You could be looking at an absolute smash. He's projected for like 1%. I don't know if that's true. If it is, I'm scared how much I'm getting to right now because I'm well over 30% on Rashawn Holmes. I have the swap ability. He gives me another roster spot to kind of maneuver as the entire slate goes on. But like Okongwu is great. Like there's no doubt about it. I'm going to have some exposure, but I'm going to be a little bit under the 20. His ownership's now gone up to nearly 25% on DK. I'm going to be shorting that just a little bit and kind of reacting to how he finishes.
Yeah. So early in the day when I was doing the strategy show with Adam, Okongwu was one of my favorite plays on slate. I still like Okongwu a whole bunch. I think he's one of the top value plays. But he was also only projected for 15% ownership earlier today, and sub 10% on FanDuel. It was 15% on DK. It was like 8 on FanDuel or something like that, if I remember correctly. I still like getting overweight to the field on him, but I do feel a little bit differently about being way overweight when he's over 20% and over double-digit ownership on FanDuel. But I had pointed out earlier today also, I really like the upside of Richaun Holmes. Can't play him in cash games. No clue what to expect from him from a minutes perspective. No. He came back from an extended layoff last game. He missed nearly 3 weeks of games. Comes back. He only plays 15 minutes last game. He did start, which here's one thing that also makes this tricky. If we don't get a specific number on what his minutes restriction is, him starting doesn't tell us anything. He started last game and played 15 minutes. I gave him 22 today. It still makes him somebody that I get to. But there's upside to play more. There's downside to play less. There's a lot of variability here, but that's kind of something to embrace in tournaments when he is priced down on FanDuel and DraftKings. So I like Richaun Holmes as tournament play. The minutes are really hard to nail down. How many are you projecting him for?
Sorry, who was that one more time? I'm sorry,
Richaun
I'm getting
Holmes.
everything in. Richaun Holmes. I have him projected for 23. And 23, I'm getting a ton.
Yep, I think he's cheap. He's a good pointsman and fantasy producer. We just don't know what the minutes are going to be. But when he's really low owned and as cheap as we're ever going to see him, I like taking shots on him as well. We have a super chat here from Robert who's asking Mo Bamba on DraftKings 5,300, 2 games with 42 fantasy points versus the 76ers. I don't really care what he's done against the 76ers in the past, but we do have Mo Bamba starting and there's no Wendell Carter Jr. The concern I have with Mo Bamba, very similarly to what I feel when it comes to Richaun Holmes, I just don't know how many minutes he's playing. For tournaments, yes, get some exposure to him. Don't go crazy. If you're playing one lineup, I wouldn't advocate playing Mo Bamba. If you're playing 20, okay to have Mo Bamba in one of them. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, you have like 10-ish% of Mo Bamba. I don't have an issue with that. I'm just concerned how many minutes they're going to end up playing him because they've been really cautious in the last couple of games. Is Mo Bamba somebody you're getting to as you're uploading your lineups?
Yeah, I've got 4.5% of him on DK. I'm playing 190 lineups over there. I think that's going to, I don't see that changing here as I'm finally finishing everything up. I think he's fine, but again, center is just so loaded. We can kind of do that game with so many guys at every position, but specifically the center position. Like there's guys that I just think have higher raw point projections, more upside at, just a slightly cheaper or slightly more expensive deal. Mo Bamba, you're playing him just because he's relatively unknown for the kind of upside he could have, but there's a large range of outcomes. I would rather just go cheaper to a guy who's in a later game than using up a roster spot on Mo Bamba in the early session.
Yeah, that's something else to look at it too, is a bit of a borderline play and you do lose some flexibility. But if you're playing a lot of lineups, I'm cool with him as a tournament option. Only a couple minutes to go into lock here. Eric, how are you doing uploading your lineups?
I got DK done. I'm just finishing up FanDuel, and then I will be all set.
Okay, so just off the top of your head, I think we've talked about a lot of the important centers, but how are you handling Jokic today?
So Jokic, it's like automatically you see that he's a little bit lower owned, and you just kind of want to get to a ton of him just because the projection is just going to be far and away. I mean, he's projected for nearly 10 points more for me than anybody else at the position, 11%. The major thing for me is that I think you need 70 on a slate like this. Like you're going to need that explosion game. Now you're getting a discount in the ownership in a way that you generally aren't. So like, I think for me, I'm more inclined to play a lot more of him on a site like FanDuel where Gobert's coming in with like 33% ownership. And I will take the raw points of Jokic, who's around 13% there. On a two center site like DK, I just think there's so many mix and match options in that mid range. I'm not going to be going to like a Nurkic on this league. He's just too expensive here now. But there's so many of these guys. Okongwu for cheap, Richaun Holmes taking a lot of stands on, Bobby Portis there at 7K. Just so many different options, mix and match. You can go LaMarcus Aldridge or Sharp. There's a case to be made for both of them. I just don't think that I need to get involved in like a crazy way. I'm getting to around 20% on DK and FanDuel, and I think I'm going to just stay at that number.
All right, so we've got a minute to go. Then it's going to be locked. And Eric, you're going to stick around for 30 minutes, talk about prize picks, talk about Odd Shopper. But let's finish with this. Who are your most exposed players, position by position? Do you want to pick? I'll do FanDuel or DraftKings. You can do the other. Which one do you have pulled up that's easier for you to look at?
I have FanDuel and I need to get it in.
Okay. So I'm going to read off my most exposed players position by position on DK right now. And then when I do that, you could say who you ended up with your most exposed players on FanDuel. So position by position for me at point guard, it is Jordan Clarkson. Shooting guard, DeAnthony Melton. Small forward, John Conchar. Power forward is DeAndre Hunter for me. Center is Okongwu. A lot of those guys fairly popular, but you know what's funny is some of these guys like Jordan Clarkson is really popular, and even though he's my most exposed player at the position, I'm still underweight to the field on him at what his number is. So some of my favorite GPP plays that I'm overweight on position by position. Bones Highland at guard, Marvin Bagley at forward. Still overweight to Okongwu, but not anything really crazy. I guess there's no real one center guy that I'm way overweight to the field on, but we did get to lock now. Who did you end up with as your most exposed players by position on FanDuel?
All right, let's do it. Jordan Clarkson, my highest owned point guard here. Russell Westbrook next, 36%. So it came down a tiny bit from the 44 I had before, but still getting to him in a meaningful way right now. Mike Conley, then Cade Cunningham, De'Aaron Fox, 32%. DeAnthony Melton, I'm half the field, 24% there on him. DeJounte Murray, Kyrie Irving. So, one other guy, 12% Saban Lee. I don't even know if we talked about him. He's 3,700 over on FanDuel. I think he kind of makes the Joe Ingles pivot for me. It's the exact same number, just kind of gives me a different lineup build. And I do assume no Killian Hayes and, Cade Cunningham on a back-to-back. Either him or Corey Joseph have a path to quite a bit there. Corey Joseph is 4,400. So I'm more inclined to take the savings, and maybe Saban Lee can spike an upside in mid-20s minutes there. Shooting guard, John Conchar, talked about him. Clarkson. James Harden, I ended up around 34%. DeAnthony Melton, obviously, at the same position there. DeMar DeRozan, that's going to come down here a little bit. I just kind of chose not to screw with that here at the moment. And then Joe Ingles, I'm at 20%, so I'm below the field there as well. Small forward, James Harden, where, he's small forward eligible there. Bojan Bogdanovic, LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Terrence Davis, 16%. So I ended up, half the field there on him as well. Right now, it looks like most of the things, I'm just kind of taking a cut on some of the more popular guys and scattershotting much better spots. Al Horford, my highest owned power forward right now. Bobby Portis as well. So they're basically in tandem. They're around 50%. And they're rounded out at center. Nikola Jokic ended up with 22%. Said he'd be around 20 there. 18% Gobert. Marvin Bagley, somebody that I got to quite a bit. They were talking. And Domantas Sabonis, 16%. That's going to go up a little bit here too as I get off some of the DeRozan.
There we go. So I was just asking for one player on each position. Eric's just out here giving out the entire player pool. All good, though. And Eric and I, we're at lock. We're not going anywhere. Guys, stick around, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's talk some prize picks now. And prize picks, the sponsor of Live Before Lock and the post-lock show today. If you guys are new to prize picks, head on over to the site, sign up using the promo code Awesemo, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, and you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You get access to all the tools that Eric and I use to build our lineups. Also, something that's a really, really useful tool when you're making some prop cards over on Prize Picks, use Odd Shopper, free tool over at Awesemo.com. You can find it right over on Awesemo. If you go to the site, you'll see a tab that says Odd Shopper. You click on that. You could also just go to oddshopper.com, and then you can click on Shop NBA Bets and just find some of the best prop bets that are available. So, Eric, why don't you go on over to Odd Shopper?
Beautiful.
I'm going to pull up Prize Picks. And we could start looking at some of the best props that are on the board based on our projections that we want to put some coin on.
All righty. I'm pulling up the NBA props. And again, Odd Shopper in 2 seconds. You can kind of find some way to find your exposure to some plays. So Ayo Dosunmu, Illinois' finest, now obviously plays in Illinois too. So that's cool. But either way, short his assists right now, 3.5 assists. But it looks like plus money here at the moment. So it's more of something expected ROI. I like to go to expected win percentage because, again, we're not worried about plus or minus money or expected ROI. We're really worried about just finding winners over at Prize Picks. So let me change that to expected win percentage. Nikola Jokic, the over of 12.5 rebounds, is the number one prop on the board in that regard. 79% expected win percentage. What do we have Nikola Jokic at over at Prize Picks?
By the way, if you didn't see also, Prize Picks added some new props. They've got points plus rebounds plus assists now.
Oh, baby.
And they've got blocks plus steals. Of course, they still have, and they also have 3-pointers made now. And Eric's favorite, free throws made. Eric loves to predict the free throws. He's gotten away from that a little bit, but earlier in the season, every day Eric was coming on here with some hot free throw takes. Jokic over on Prize Picks, same number, 12.5 rebounds. I love hitting the over there. Let's see, where do I have him projected for? Every slate with Nikola Jokic, I have him projected for the most fantasy points on every slate, but so many fantasy points.
Yep.
The only time I didn't in recent memory was the James Harden slate where Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were both out. Other than that, Jokic always going to be the highest for me. But yeah, Jokic, I have it projected for 15.5. Play the over on Jokic's rebounds. By the way, news from the news god. Gary Trent is out today.
Love it. Let's go. I already had all the Precious in. This is just beautiful. Guys, 5:30. Again, it's an hour and a half. I'm just so happy it came after lock. That's all I cared about. Precious Achiuwa, my favorite. I'm just going to have a stupid amount of him now at power forward. I already had like 12%. I'm going to get to like way more than that.
So here are the minutes that the Toronto Raptors played their guys last game. Same situation. Gary Trent is out. Kem Birch is out. Kem Birch remains out. That's important. Here's what they did with the rotation. Pascal Siakam, by the way, this was not a game that went to overtime. This is a regulation game where these guys played this many minutes. Pascal Siakam, 42 minutes. Chris Boucher, 38 off the bench. Scotty Barnes, 39 minutes. Fred VanVleet, 41 minutes. Precious Achiuwa, 37 minutes. OG Anunoby, 34 minutes. And that's only because he got in foul trouble. Anunoby got in foul trouble, played 34 minutes. And that's maybe the only reason that Justin Champagny played 9 minutes off the bench. There's a case that he would have been out of the rotation had it not been for 4 personal fouls on Scotty Barnes and 5 on OG Anunoby. I like everybody here on Toronto now. And I'm not saying you go out and you just go play all 5 of these guys in the same lineup or anything, or all 6 of them. But if you don't have GPP exposure to them and you're playing a bunch of GPP lineups, get some exposure to the Toronto Raptors in your life, because these guys might all play around 40 minutes.
This is also why you wait with your exposure, because how good does it feel to have Mo Bamba taking up lineup spots from Precious Achiuwa right now at a more expensive price with less variability in the minutes? I would say it doesn't feel very good. So again, I ended up a little bit below the 5% number, and I'm just fine with that. That's why if you're playing a handful of lineups too, like, can Mo Bamba go for 40? Absolutely. But like somebody cheaper can go for 42, and his name is Precious Achiuwa.
Yep. I like it. There's so much minutes upside for these Toronto Raptors guys.
And Scotty Barnes is 5,500 over on FanDuel. Like, hello.
And let's see, what was the projected ownership on these guys? Also, I'm going to check out some of the Prize Picks numbers.
Yeah. Check them out now. You want to get him now.
Fred VanVleet, 39.5 fantasy points over. OG Anunoby, 29 fantasy points over. Scotty Barnes, 30 fantasy points over. Give me the over on these Raptors guys right now on Prize Picks. Any disagreements there?
Nope, we want all overs. And here's the guy, and again, he's just getting spammed in here. My guy is Precious Achiuwa. I loved Precious Achiuwa before anybody else. Not Precious Achiuwa. That's not who I meant to talk about. But our boy, Chris Boucher, like legitimately impacts.
Oh, is Daryl Ward back in the YouTube chat? He was so fired up about Chris Boucher this morning.
6,100 on DK is interesting.
We're on the first game. We're on the first game of the slate on the strategy show this morning. We're talking about the Wizards, and Daryl Ward is in chat going, "Why are you guys disrespecting Chris Boucher and not talking about it?" It's like, relax, man. We're gonna get to him. We got the Raptors coming up.
We have a Bible to read today. Like, we have to read through the freaking Bible. 13 gamer, guys. I have never looked at an NBA slate. I can't remember. From last night until today, I had an NFL show this morning, looked at NBA for like 2 hours, did like an hour of golf research because we got the golf show tonight. And then it was just NBA. I've not left my chair since like 6:30 a.m. In make-believe time out here on the West Coast. I mean, I can't tell you enough. Like, Precious Achiuwa was always the priority, but Chris Boucher's fine. You just can't go nuts with the guy because you never know when the hat drops in that regard. Plus, they just hate Chris Boucher for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I dislike him is from a real life standpoint, he's not great, and and he's old too, which a lot of people I brought up this morning. Chris Boucher is 29 years old. It's not like he's some young prospect. Just took him a while to get to the NBA. For fantasy purposes, How do you feel? So DK, he's 6,100, 7,000 on FanDuel though. That's a little steep for me.
I'm going to get to like a tiny, like maybe 2 or 4%. I mean, for me, it just comes down to, do you project him for 38 minutes? 35, I put him in. I'll get to a little bit at 7K. I think you just have to be looking at it. If this is why you play multiple sites, once again, because like Chris Boucher, the opportunity cost of giving it up, like the Al Horford coming up here, which that game's going to get going in the next wave of games, and giving up a lot of these other spots, like that's more difficult for me to get to a 7K guy. And you have Precious Achiuwa on his team for like legitimately almost half the price on FanDuel. So like play a lot of Precious, get to a tiny bit of Chris Boucher if you really want to take that dart. But where you really want to play him is over on DK, where you get the opportunity to play him at power forward.
Yeah. And I mean, all of these guys. So where Pascal Siakam, and also bring this back to prize picks, Siakam's over under is 44 fantasy points. That one to me is fair. But these other guys, over for just to reiterate, Fred VanVleet when he was 39, Scotty Barnes 30 fantasy. Just take the over on these other guys. And let me see, I don't think there was a number on Precious here. No, there isn't. But either way, DFS load up on these Toronto Raptors guys. They might all play 40 minutes.
It's just beautiful. I have, and here's the thing. You can say like 7K, no thanks, Chris Boucher. I totally get it. But the thing is, there's definite minutes and fantasy point upside. The guy is over a fantasy point per minute rate. Like if you rank these three guys, Pascal Siakam 1.15, Fred VanVleet 1.1, Chris Boucher is next 1.06. Like that's the kind of upside we're looking at. Like Achiuwa, it's a price thing, 4,500. He's 4,400 on DK. You know, you have to give up a center spot, but I don't really care. There's a lot of minutes there. For Chris Boucher, legitimately, he could destroy this slate at like 2%. So have some fun. Like, I think you can still get to a little bit. I'm not going to go nuts at 7K on FanDuel, but I don't think you need to.
We got some super chats here to get to, and I don't really have anything else to add here. No, play those Raptors guys, swap onto them as much as you can. Twisted Reality Gaming, thoughts on SGA? A little bit underpriced, but there's a lot of players on the slate that are very underpriced. It's hard to prioritize them. If you have a small percentage of them, not an issue. If you have a lot of exposure to SGA, that's an issue for me.
Yep, I would agree. Also, somebody just DM me, and I saw it in chat earlier. Charlie Brown. Yeah, this is why you also don't play Charlie Brown no matter what, because you're giving up a lineup spot to these Toronto guys. Like instantly, the second the slate locks and you play Charlie Brown, you have 50 other plays that look just 50 times better. Like don't do that on a 13 game slate ever.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say never play Charlie Brown, but a 99.9999999901999%, you're not playing Charlie Brown. So, in general, a good rule of thumb is don't play Charlie Brown.
Family, I played Charlie Brown. I swear to God, I had people DMing me, and in my group chat with my Iowa buddies, they were just like, Charlie Brown starting for the Sixers. I didn't even respond. I didn't know what to say. It's like, I don't care.
I care. I don't play Charlie Brown. Don't do it. Don't. I mean, it's too late now that the game's already locked. But CS. Okay. Okay. So he's asking for /utility on DK, playing Sabonis and SGA, better duo out there.
Sabonis SGA. I mean, I love Sabonis. I talked about that. SGA is fine for me. A better duo out there for forward utility on DK. So if we're like looking. I don't know what their combined salaries are. I don't know. If you gave me like the number, I might be able to piece it together. But like, I think that's a great tournament combination. You have a low-owned Domantas Sabonis. SGA is just fine. I will say against San Antonio, 221 total. It's fine for a game environment. But like SGA, I'm not beating down the door to be playing him. 9K is his number over on FanDuel. I know. What is he over here on this DK slate?
He's 8,400 with only point guard eligibility. So let's see who else is around 8,400 that I have. I've De'Aaron Fox projected higher than SGA, and he's lower owned. So I would say play Fox, especially because there's number one, people aren't playing Fox. No Halliburton. People are gravitating towards playing Terrence Davis. Fox totally getting swept on. And once again, because it's a 13 game slate, we can't talk about every individual player, but I think Fox warrants being overweight to the field on it is low ownership.
I talked about him for a long time on this show. I talked about De'Aaron Fox a long time.
Did we talk about him for a long time?
I literally talked about it for like 10 minutes.
Guard was a long time ago, but anyway, I prefer Fox to SGA.
That's fair. Yeah, same here. So do that.
And let's see forwards now. So now we're talking about forward position and Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis is 10-1. There's nobody priced around Sabonis.
Yeah. I said you might get burned with some Malcolm Brogdon. Again, if it's like your one lineup and your night depends on it, I think there's other things to do with Sabonis, but for me, I'm willing to take that shot and put him in 25% of my lineups. I just think there's a massive amount of upside. I don't expect him to share the floor with Goga this much going forward. Like, I think that was kind of an outlier scenario. Goga, best of luck guarding LeBron James at the 5 in closing this game or something. Like, there's just I
don't think Goga's playing very much today.
Yeah, he played 25 minutes against the Lakers. Or against the Clippers, sorry. Now against this Lakers team, like, he'll play like the 16, 18 minutes alongside Dwight Howard. That might be it. Like, legitimately it. Sabonis, I just think playing the 5, he's just going to smash in this spot.
Yeah, and also just because somebody asked about it, will Watanabe get any run? Maybe. He played 0 minutes last game in the same roster. That's if you were to say one thing that could kind of throw a wrench into how we're projecting the Toronto guys now, Watanabe, Svi Mykhailiuk, these guys both played 0 minutes last game. It's not crazy to think these guys play like 10 to 12 minutes, and that would impact some of these Toronto guys quite a bit. But considering how they ran the rotation last game, I kind of just think it's going to be the same.
I'm with you. And here's the thing. He's unaffected to the Siakam. Like, Watanabe getting in there it doesn't really affect so much Precious Watanabe. He would definitely affect Boucher, but like, Boucher is the guy that I think he could destroy the slate, but I also think he's probably the most volatile guy to be getting to on that team. I trust his minutes allotment the least out of any other player there. Like, for me, it's really taking the price point of Precious, taking shots on the rest of the guys, and then prioritizing Scotty Barnes on FanDuel.
And then we got a Raptors related question in our premium Discord channel. JEW, Greg and Eric, okay to play Precious and Boucher in the same lineup together on DK? Yeah, I don't have any real concerns with it. Typically, I wouldn't love that for a 13-game slate, but they're both fairly cheap, and they could both play 40 minutes today. So good by me. How about you?
Yeah, it's just fine because their minutes are overlapping. So, like, it doesn't for me, when you have to consider something like that, are they sharing the floor together? Yeah, they're sharing the floor together. So I don't think they can completely be detriments to each other. They're going to have Pascal that's going to be kind of rotated. That's your front court. Those are the 3 guys that are going to get rotated around. You know, how they're going to break up those 48 minutes for power forward and center throughout. I mean, you just expect like 36 for the most part, or, you know, obviously Pascal can play 40 because that's what he's doing here lately. And the other guys are playing the 34 to 38 minutes. But as long as they're sharing the floor together, less inclined to be that worried about it.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And also where the situation's different is you could have them kind of cut into each other's minutes and not be a big deal. Cause then you're looking at this thing where it's like, hey, you know, whatever, they each play 34 minutes instead of the 40, and they could both do still fairly well. Let's react to some ongoings right now.
Let me guess. Mo Bamba's going nuts. Oh no.
Let's see.
I don't give a shit.
Let's see. Justin Wilson saying LeBron isn't starting at the 5 tonight. Doesn't mean he's not closing at the 5. And he might start at center as well, but we'll see. Yep. 5 points and 2 rebounds for Mo Bamba.
3 rebounds.
The first 4 minutes of the game.
I put that game on. So there's
Joel Embiid, 7 points. We've got Tobias Harris racking up the defensive stats, because Tobias Harris on defense here, 2 steals and a block in 4 minutes. How about that?
That's pretty fascinating. Dosunmu in the starting lineup still, so no Caruso starting. That's an important thing to just kind of throw in. So the people who had 4,200 Dosunmu on their bingo card for FanDuel, you can still hit that number. That's fine. I just don't want to go nuts with it. It's too popular. It's going to be more popular than I think we're projecting. It just seems like a guy who went off, and now people are going to just keep rostering a guy who just went off. Like, that's how it kind of works.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I said before, I think Dosunmu is going. And also, this doesn't change anything for me.
No.
We knew he was going to be starting, and there are no Dosunmu props on Prize Picks. That was something I was just looking for, but nothing there right now. Let's go back to Odd Shopper and tell me what else pops up there that looks good, and excluding, obviously, the first 2 early games.
Yeah, so CJ McCollum exists. That's kind of cool for Portland. It's kind of not cool for Anthony Simons, and we're seeing 6.5 being the assist prop for him. I still expect him to play big minutes, but you have CJ McCollum now playing alongside of him. That's going to make a difference. Oh my God, Mo Bamba just knocked down a 3. What is happening? He's 2 for 2 from 3 right now.
He's a good 3-point shooter.
I know he is, but I'm just saying that he just spotted up in Embiid's face twice.
Yeah, and then
That's so dumb.
Did you see that he looked in the camera? He said, "Go." He said, "Screw Eric Lindquist." I mean, are you motivating him?
I did hear that. And Charlie Brown Jr. just got a block. So
yeah,
whatever. Just motivational speaker out here for everybody.
Mo Bamba this year is
glad I didn't switch my Bamba lineup in time. Yeah, I'm happy for you. I'm
33% from 3 this year. Mo Bamba, noted sharpshooter, one of the best 3-point. Listen, of Orlando Magic players that were drafted at over 7 feet tall, Mo Bamba's probably the best 3-point shooter of any of them, right? Who else would you say has been better?
I mean, I can't think of who. I can't. Are you thinking of somebody specifically? Because I don't get what.
No, it's doing. Nobody. He's the best.
Literally 33%. Well done. Congratulations. Well done.
Let's get back to who are some of the other numbers that stand out on, or some of the other prop numbers that stand out on Odd Chopper.
All right. So, I mean, I just said 6.5. What we have the Simons one there. Scotty Barnes smashed the over on rebounds. That would be the thing I would want to get to. Has that changed yet from the 5.5 it was at before?
It is 6.
Yeah, you could still probably do that. 7.4 rebounds we're projecting him for. That's a 76% win percentage on 5.5. But, you know, the extra 0.5 does matter quite a bit, but I'm still inclined to take that shot and try to go that direction. How about our boy LaMelo Ball? 8,200 over on FanDuel. I think I'm going to be getting to that number quite a bit there. 5.5 rebounds that we're looking at for him there. He had the night off, didn't end up playing on Monday. He had a rumbling his tumbly. It wasn't COVID, which is great. But LaMelo Ball, 7.1 rebounds here for him, 5.5 being the number that you're looking at for a line there. I think that looks like a lot of great rebound props to kind of take advantage of. A lot of minutes to be had for some of these situations. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that we're kind of looking at being positive for it. I will say Dwight Howard shorting 7.5. I can't imagine they're going to have him out there against Sabonis a whole heck of a lot. Like Sabonis pretty darn good offensively. And, you know, this is a washed up Dwight Howard here, 7.5 rebounds. I don't know how much time he's going to be on the floor here tonight. I do expect LeBron to be playing a lot of the time at the 5, like he has been here. They found a little something here in this regard, but Dwight Howard, good, best of luck against Sabonis, a pretty polished offensive center. So 7.5 shorting his rebound prop looks pretty good too.
So the number is 7 on Prize Picks, not the 7.5. I do think that's a little bit more fair. Yeah. Any change of opinion based on that?
I think it's okay. It's probably just not a priority whatsoever. I mean, that might be a good number if you're playing. So you can go up to 10x on a 4-player deal. If you're going to play the 5, you automatically have it where it's 2x for 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5. If you're trying to round out like a late night card and, you know, you might be trying to hedge something or trying to find some kind of like a late slate play that you really want to have exposure to. But overall, it's not going to be like at the very top of the board at 7, at 7.5. Obviously, you get that little extra bit to garner some profit. But, you know, for me, I still think it's probably okay to throw in, maybe just lesser of a priority now.
I'd probably just stay away from it 7, to be honest. 7.5 feels a little bit better because you need him to get 6 or less. And, you know, who knows, maybe they do decide to play Dwight Howard more at center to minimize the workload of LeBron. 7, I'd stay away from. If I had to take a side, it would be the under, but probably a stay away from me. What's the next prop that pops up there?
All right, we've got Bam Adebayo. We're shorting him in the assists department, sharing a floor with Jimmy Butler. I've talked about this, I think, on a number of shows going back to last year, where Bam Adebayo is one of my favorite underrated passers in the NBA. Like, legitimately has great vision for a big, does really, really well in absence of Jimmy Butler being on the floor. Well, he's sharing the floor with Jimmy Butler. So legitimately, I have no desire to really be playing a lot of Bam so long as he's active alongside Butler. I think he's affected by Butler a lot more than vice versa. So looking at shorting his prop, I think is definitely something you can do. 4.5 assists, a little bit too big alongside Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, once again, the number on Prize Picks, though, 3.5.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. So it's just a complete stay away. I mean, we're just going back and forth. This is why you need to be shopping for numbers as well, because you can find some of these props a number of books, but then looking at Prize Picks, like we really want to be specific on making sure we find those good expected win percentages. You can still take advantage of late news here too. Obviously, Scotty Barnes, the rebounds prop, we're looking at going over 5.5, even 6. I've kind of come around. I still like him. I updated some stuff. 7.7 rebounds, I think, is a good number still. So the over of 6, I'm happy to take with Scotty Barnes. I feel pretty confident in saying that he's another guy that, regardless of any other guy kind of mixing in, he's a rookie that they just are going to be featuring going forward. And I have no qualms about him playing 35, 36 minutes in this spot.
Yeah, I could see it that same way. Let's see if we could find a prop though that we really like. Let's find one that people could take some action.
Can we go to the free throws?
Oh, okay. Let's do your free throws. I know you love yourself some free throws.
I do. This is kind of a gross one, but it is what it is. We're going to be going to the over of 1.5 free throws for DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray just on a floor too much, too involved offensively to not have that be something where a majority of the time you're going to see somebody kind of going over 1.5 free throws who has the ball in their hands this much, that is offensively this involved. Obviously, if you look at his box score through the last couple, he's had a lot of like lower than you would expect free throw outputs. I mean, 2, 3, 7, 1. But like DeJounte Murray is too good of a player to not at least be invested at this low of a number. So 1.5 free throws. I mean, look at some of these other lines themselves, 6.5, 5.5. I'm just kind of floating it out there. If he gets to the line, it's pretty much an automatic 2.
Yeah. By the way, I'm such a 3-year-old. There was just a fire truck that went by my house. I'm like, ooh, a fire truck. And I just kind of glance out there like, ooh, or it just totally distracts me because I mean, it's noisy. There's lights going off. It's a whole deal. Let's see. I'm just going through the free throws right now. Mm-hmm. I don't really have any real takes on free throws. You're the free throw man.
I am.
What about 3? Where's Fred Van Vliet on the 3-pointers here? Nothing for him on 3s.
Bam Adebayo's on the bench, so that makes me happier. Robin Lopez in the game, thank God. Once again, everybody can just relax. He's got 1 foul. I need him to get another foul would be ideal, but whatever.
Careful. Don't start panicking.
I'm not panicking. Look how calm I am. Look how calm I am. Why did DeJounte Murray just take such a gigantic... Oh, because I accidentally clicked lock button on him. That would be very bad.
I've got a dumb, not dumb, but one that I think is sensible here. Blocks plus steals. Blocks plus steals. The new thing they have up over on Prize Picks. Duncan Robinson is set at 0.5. With Tyler Hero out today, Duncan Robinson, I think there's a pretty good chance he plays extended minutes. He started last game. I know the minutes haven't always been there for him, but Tyler Hero's in health and safety protocol. There's no Kyle Lowry. He's out today. I think we could see pretty big minutes from Duncan Robinson. Not that hard for him to walk himself into 1 block or steal. Give me over 0.5. Give me 1 defensive stat from Duncan Robinson.
I like that, actually. Again, it's a minutes play. Like, eventually, the guy's just going to accidentally run into the basketball. Like, 30 minutes of Duncan Robinson being on a floor, that makes some sense. Again, I thought Gabe Vincent, we didn't even talk about this, on FanDuel, he's 5K, and it just kind of looks random looking at him. But 32 minutes, there aren't a lot of pivots, and we've seen a number of these guys, whether it's him, Max Strus, they just spike these random 3-point upsides. I'm more inclined to take shots on them at 2% than I am to take shots at them in any kind of like irrational ownership. But I do have a little bit of interest there on Gabe Vincent. We never talked about him before. Impossible to talk about everything and every situation on a 13-game slate, but I love that over of 0.5. So I'm going to put that in now too.
Yeah, and I know people are saying, hey, these terrible defensive stats. All right. I mean, I personally have them projected for about 1 steals plus blocks combined. When the number is 0.5, pretty significantly over on that number. And once again, Duncan Robinson's numbers this year, does he accumulate a lot of defensive stats? No, but he averages 0.7 steals per game and 0.2 blocks per game and 27 minutes per game. And I think we're probably looking at over 30 minutes from him, considering he started last game and Tyler Hero's out. So do I think Duncan Robinson's going to become, Miles Turner blocking shots? No, we just need him to walk into 1 steal or 1 block. So give me the over.
We're going 0.5. For 1. Do you know that movie?
1. Not looking for something crazy. 1.
Do you know that movie? Chad will know that movie.
What'd you
1.
say?
We're going for 1.
No. What movie?
Chad will know. I wanted to know if Chad knows.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
Let's
curious.
see. Let's see. We've got zero answers so far.
Well, I mean, it's going to take a second. They have to hear us. There's like a 10-second lag or something.
Oh, here we got Jerry Sink. Okay, response from Jerry Sink. He's saying 3,800 looks good for Duncan Robinson. Cola, Embiid, 20 points and 5 rebounds in the first quarter for Joel Embiid.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no responses on your movie thing though. And by the way,
Nobody cares.
Oh,
It's fine. It's
OMG,
push-ups.
LOLs said, Eric, we heard you. They heard you. They've got no responses here. By the way, what is going on with this, Joe? You know, we should have realized because you know how much you hate Mo Bamba. So apparently Mo Bamba did have an impact on this late. Impossible for him to guard Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, 20 points, 5 rebounds, and a block in 10 minutes.
Jesus.
8 points, 3 rebounds for Bamba in his first rotation, but he is doing
28. That seems good.
nothing to stop Joel Embiid. Guess what time it is, Eric?
It's time to go.
It is that time of day. Guys, if you haven't done so already, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Most importantly, good luck. Win some money tonight, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Check out PGA Live before lock, half an hour. Started.